The crack of rifle fire echoed across the dusty range like thunder, but it was the sudden silence that made everyone look up. Private Chen lowered her M4 carbine, squinting through the desert heat shimmer at the target downrange. Around her, the other recruits were still firing their qualification rounds, brass casings pinging against concrete. Drill sergeants barking corrections over the noise. Creating these stories takes significant time and effort. If you're enjoying this, please like, share, and subscribe. But Colonel Marcus Hayes had gone completely still. Maya followed his gaze to her target, the black silhouette barely visible at 300 meters. She'd been shooting for less than 2 minutes, burning through her allocated ammunition with methodical precision. Nothing special about that. Every recruit had to qualify. Most struggled to hit center mass at this distance, especially in the crosswinds that swept across Fort Benning's ranges like invisible rivers. The colonel was walking now, his measured stride eating up the ground between the firing line and her position. Other instructors began to notice, conversations trailing off mid-sentence. Maya's drill sergeant, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, appeared at her shoulder, his weathered face unreadable beneath the brim of his campaign hat. "What's the situation, Private?" Rodriguez asked quietly. Maya shrugged, genuinely confused. "Just shooting my qual, Drill Sergeant." The colonel reached them, his pale blue eyes fixed on Maya with an intensity that made her skin crawl. He was older than she'd expected from his reputation silver threading through dark hair, lines around his eyes that spoke of years squinting into hostile territory. But his movements held the fluid economy of someone who'd never really left the battlefield behind. "Cease fire on the line." The range master's voice boomed through the loudspeakers. "All weapons safe. All personnel hold position." The sudden quiet felt oppressive. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, the whisper of wind through the wooden target. Stands, the distant rumble of helicopters conducting training flights. 50 other recruits stood frozen at their firing positions, all eyes turning toward the small drama unfolding at position 12. Colonel Hayes extended his hand toward Maya's rifle. "May I?" She hesitated for just a moment. Weapons were sacred in the Army, never to be handled carelessly, then handed over the M4. The colonel examined it briefly, checking the optic, testing the trigger pull, running his fingers along the barrel as if reading Braille. "Standard issue," he murmured. "No modifications. Iron sights zeroed to factory specifications." He looked up at Maya. "When did you last fire this weapon, Private?" "This morning, sir. First time I've touched this particular rifle." Something flickered in the colonel's expression. He handed the weapon back and turned toward the target retrieval system. "Bring 12 downrange." The mechanical whir of the pulley system seemed unnaturally loud as Maya's target began its journey back from the 300-meter line. Other recruits craned their necks, trying to see what had caused such a stir. Maya found herself holding her breath, though she couldn't say why. The target arrived. With a metallic clunk, Colonel Hayes lifted it from the clips, holding it up to catch the afternoon light. The silence stretched until Maya thought she might scream just to break it. The black silhouette was nearly intact, nearly, where the head should have been. There was nothing but empty space, a ragged hole perhaps 2 inches across. The chest contained another hole, this one smaller, precise. And low on the torso, a third entry point that would have taken out vital organs, 3 distinct areas. Multiple holes clustered impossibly tight. "How many rounds did you fire, Private Chen?" The colonel's voice was carefully neutral. 30. "Sir, full qualification course." Colonel Hayes looked at the target again, then at Maya, then back at the target. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of years and wars and decisions that had shaped the fate of nations. "Private Chen, you fired 30 rounds at this target. 30 military specification, 5.56 rounds. through a standard-issue carbine at 300 meters in desert crosswinds. He paused, and Maya could feel the attention of everyone on the range focused on this moment. 27 rounds created a single hole in the head area. The remaining 3 formed tight groups in the chest and torso, each group smaller than a quarter. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. She stared at the target, her mind racing through the mechanics of what she'd just done without. Thinking about it. Compensating for wind drift, calculating bullet drop, adjusting for the weapon's particular quirks. All of it had happened automatically, instinctively, as natural as breathing. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez whistled low under his breath. Jesus Christ. That will be enough, Sergeant. Colonel Hayes folded the target carefully, as if it were made of something precious. Private Chen, you'll report to Building 4 at 0800 tomorrow. Ask for Major Patterson. Sir, that's all, Private. Carry on with your training. The colonel walked away, leaving Maya standing in the middle of the firing line with 50 pairs of eyes boring into her back. The range master's voice crackled through the speakers again, calling for the resumption of training, but Maya barely heard it. Her hands shook slightly as she safed her weapon and prepared to clear the firing line. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez moved closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Chun, I've been training shooters for 15 years. I've seen Olympic marksmen who couldn't do what you just did. His dark eyes searched her face. Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that? Maya swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry as desert sand. The honest answer that she didn't know, that it had felt as natural as walking sounded insane, even in her own head. So she said nothing, shouldering her rifle and walking toward the weapon cleaning stations, with the mechanical movements of someone in shock. Behind her, she could hear the whispered conversation starting up again, her name passed from mouth to mouth like a secret. But it was the memory of Colonel Hayes' expression that followed her off the range, the look of a man who'd just seen something that changed everything he thought he knew about the world. Creating these stories takes significant time and effort. If you're enjoying this, please like, share, and subscribe. Maya Chun had never thought much about destiny. Growing up in a small Oregon town where the most exciting thing that happened was the annual Timber Festival, she'd planned on college. Maybe a degree in computer science, a quiet life writing code for some tech company in Portland. The Army had been an afterthought, a way to pay for school when her family's restaurant business couldn't cover tuition. Now, lying in her narrow bunk in the barracks, she stared at the ceiling and wondered if destiny had other plans. The whispers had followed her through chow, through evening formation, through the ritualistic cleaning of equipment that marked the end of each training day. Her bunkmate, Jessica Torres from San Antonio, had tried to draw her out, but Maya found herself reluctant to talk about what had happened on the range. How could she explain something she didn't understand herself? Chun, the voice belonged to Private Williams, a tall kid from Alabama who'd been struggling with marksmanship since day one. That thing you did today, how'd you know where to aim? Maya rolled onto her side, facing the wall. I just aimed at the target. Bullshit. Williams' voice carried a mixture of admiration and resentment. Nobody shoots like that by accident. My daddy's been hunting since he was 5, and he couldn't put 27 rounds through the same hole if his life depended on it. Maybe. Your daddy needs glasses, Torres said sharply, always quick to defend her bunkmate. Maybe Chun's some kind of robot, Williams shot back. Or maybe she's been lying about never handling weapons before. Maya sat up abruptly, her patience finally snapping. You want to know the truth, Williams? I have no idea how I did it. I've never fired a rifle before 2 weeks ago. I've never even held a real gun before basic, so if you've got theories, keep them to yourself. The barracks fell quiet. Maya could feel the weight of 24 recruits listening, processing, judging. She lay back down and pulled her blanket over her head, effectively ending the conversation. but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that target, the impossibly precise grouping that had frozen a full colonel in his tracks. She'd felt something on that range, something she couldn't name. The rifle had felt alive in her hands, an extension of her will rather than a tool to be mastered. The crosswinds hadn't been obstacles. They'd been information, as readable as text on a page. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. Building 4 stood apart from the main training complex, a nondescript concrete structure that could have been anything from a supply depot to an administrative office. Maya arrived at 0755, early enough to demonstrate punctuality, but not so early as to seem overeager. The morning Georgia heat was already building, promising another scorching day of training in the field. The receptionist, a staff sergeant with the crisp bearing of someone who'd never seen combat, directed her to an office on the second floor. Maya climbed the stairs, her boots echoing in the empty stairwell, and knocked on door 201. Enter. Major Patterson was not what Maya had expected. Where Colonel Hayes had carried himself with the controlled violence of a career warrior, the major seemed almost academic, wire-rimmed glasses, prematurely gray hair, the soft build of someone who spent more time behind a desk than in the field. But his eyes held the same unsettling intensity she'd seen in the colonel the day before. "Private Chen, please, sit." He gestured to a chair across from his desk, which was notably free of the usual military clutter. No family photos, no unit citations, no personal touches at all. Coffee? No thank you, sir. Major Patterson poured himself a cup from a machine in the corner, taking his time. When he finally settled behind his desk, he opened a manila folder and studied its contents for a long moment. "Your file makes for interesting reading," he said finally. "Honor student in high school. SAT scores in the 98th percentile. Accepted to Oregon State, intended major in computer science." He looked up. "What changed your mind about college?" "Money, sir. My family couldn't afford the tuition." "I see." The major made a note. No prior military experience, no family history of service, no exposure to weapons training of any kind. Another note. "And yet yesterday you demonstrated marksmanship skills that frankly shouldn't exist." Maya said nothing. "What was there to say? Tell me about the shooting, Private. Not the mechanics, we have the target, we know what happened. Tell me what it felt like." The question caught her off guard. She'd expected an interrogation about her background, maybe accusations of lying about her experience. This felt more like therapy. It felt ... She searched for words. "Natural, sir. Like the rifle was just an extension of me. I could feel the wind, know exactly how it would affect the bullet. I could see the exact point where each round would hit before I pulled the trigger." Major Patterson leaned forward slightly. "And this didn't strike you as unusual?" "At the time, no, sir. It wasn't until everyone reacted that I realized it was something special." "Have you ever experienced anything similar? Perhaps not with weapons, but with other activities requiring precision? Sports, maybe, or musical instruments?" Maya thought back through her childhood, looking for patterns. "I was pretty good at video games," she said finally. "First-person shooters mostly, but that's just hand-eye coordination. What about other things? Academic subjects that came unusually easily. Physical activities where you excelled without training." A memory surfaced herself at 12, picking up her cousin's guitar for the first time and somehow knowing exactly where to place her fingers to make the chords sound right. Her aunt had been amazed, had wanted to sign her up for lessons immediately. But Maya had put the guitar down and never touched it again, uncomfortable with the attention. "Maybe," she admitted that Major Patterson made another note, then closed the folder. "Private Chen, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Are you familiar with the term genetic memory?" Maya shook her head. It's a controversial concept in neuroscience. The idea that certain types of knowledge or skills can be passed down through genetic inheritance rather than learned behavior. Most scientists dismiss it as pseudoscience. He paused. Most scientists haven't seen what you did yesterday. The office felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker. Maya found herself gripping the arms of her chair. Sir, I don't understand what you're getting at. Your marksmanship was impossible given your background. This suggests genetic inheritance. I'm not lying, sir. I believe you. Major Patterson stood and walked to the window, looking out over the training grounds where recruits were beginning their morning exercises. Which leaves us with a very interesting question. If you didn't learn these skills, where did they come from? Maya felt a chill despite the building heat. Sir, are you suggesting that I inherited them somehow? I'm not suggesting anything. Private, I'm simply exploring possibilities. He turned back to face her. Tell me about your family history. Parents, grandparents, going back as far as you know. My parents run a Chinese restaurant in Portland. My mom's family immigrated in the 1960s. My dad's came over in the 1980s. Pretty standard immigrant story. Work hard, build a business, give your kids better opportunities. And before that? What do you know about your family's history in China? Maya shrugged. Not much. My grandparents didn't talk about the old country very often. Something about it being too painful to remember. Major Patterson's expression grew thoughtful. The Chinese Civil War lasted from 1945 to 1949. Your grandfather may have been a soldier. He pulled out a thick folder. Private Chen, you're part of a classified program studying genetic inheritance of military capabilities. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere in the building, a phone was ringing. Maya tried to process what she was hearing, but it felt like trying to hold water in her hands. This is insane, she said finally. 5 years ago, we identified a young man in Nevada who could track animals through terrain where professional hunters saw nothing. No training, no experience, but his great-grandfather had been a Paiute scout for the U.S. Cavalry. Major Patterson opened the folder and showed her a photograph of a lean, weathered-looking man in military fatigues. 3 years ago, a recruit in South Carolina demonstrated an intuitive understanding of explosive devices that surpassed most EOD specialists. Her grandfather had been a demolitions expert with the French resistance. Maya stared at the photographs, her mind reeling. And you think I'm like them? I think you may have inherited the marksmanship skills of an ancestor who was exceptionally gifted in that area. Someone who used those skills in warfare, probably under extreme conditions that required split-second accuracy to survive. But how is that possible? Skills aren't genetic. The neurological basis for these skills can be inherited. Your genetic potential has been dormant for generations. Maya stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, drill sergeants were putting recruits through their morning PT, the familiar rhythms of military life continuing as if the world hadn't just shifted beneath her feet. What does this mean for me? She asked without turning around. That depends entirely on what you choose to do with this information. Major Patterson's voice was carefully neutral. You can finish basic training, complete your enlistment, and go on with your life. The Army has plenty of good soldiers who are excellent marksmen. Or you can help us understand this phenomenon better. Work with our research team to explore the full extent of your capabilities. Help us identify others like you. Maya turned back to face him. And in exchange? Specialized training. Access to the most advanced weapons and tactics in the world. The chance to serve your country in ways that most soldiers never could. He paused. And answers. About yourself, about your family, about capabilities you never knew you possessed. The offer hung in the air between them like smoke. Maya could feel the weight of the moment, the sense that her next words would determine the course of her entire life. Part of her wanted to run, to reject this entire conversation and go back to the simple goal of getting through basic training. But another part, a part that had awakened yesterday on the firing range, whispered that she'd been sleepwalking through life until now. If I said yes, she asked slowly, what would happen next? Major Patterson smiled for the first time since she'd entered the office. Then we'd find out just how deep this rabbit hole goes. The decision, when it came, felt inevitable. Maya had spent her entire life feeling slightly out of step with the world around her, as if she were playing a game where everyone else knew the rules but her. Yesterday, for the first time, she'd felt completely in sync with her environment, her capabilities, her purpose. I want to know, she said. Major Patterson nodded as if he'd expected nothing else. Then we'll start immediately. Report to Building 12 at 06:00 tomorrow. Bring only your basic gear, everything else will be provided. What about my training? Company, my drill sergeants? Will be told that you've been selected for specialized training. It happens often enough that it won't raise questions. He stood and extended his hand. Welcome to Project Looking Glass, Private Chen. The handshake felt like stepping through a doorway into a world she couldn't have imagined 24 hours earlier. As Maya left the building and walked back toward the barracks, she tried to process what had just happened. Genetic memory, inherited skills, a secret program that had been studying people like her for decades. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt like the first piece of a puzzle she'd been trying to solve her entire life without knowing it. The sun was climbing toward its midday peak, and the training schedule waited for no one. Maya had equipment to clean, classes to attend, the 100 small requirements of military life to fulfill. But underneath it all, she carried the knowledge that tomorrow would bring something entirely new. She thought about her grandfather, a man she'd barely known, who died when she was 7. He'd been quiet, distant, spending most of his time in the garden behind the restaurant, tending vegetables, with the same methodical precision she'd brought to the firing range. She remembered his hands, scarred, weathered, always moving with purpose and control. Had he known? Had he carried the same strange certainty she'd felt yesterday, the sense of abilities waiting to be awakened? Had he ever wondered if his granddaughter might inherit more than just his love of growing things? Maya reached the barracks to find her training company preparing for afternoon classes. The whispers and stares followed her as they had since yesterday, but now they felt different. Less intrusive, more like background noise. She had bigger things to think about than the speculation of her fellow recruits. Where've you been? Torres asked as Maya retrieved her field manual from her footlocker. Admin stuff, Maya replied, which was technically true. Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Maya considered the question seriously. Maybe she had seen a ghost, the ghost of a grandfather she'd never really known, whose capabilities had somehow found their way into her hands across decades of silence. Everything's fine, she said. Just fine. But as she settled into her seat for the afternoon's instruction on field communications, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that fine was the last thing her life would ever be again. Tomorrow would bring Project Looking Glass, specialized training, and the beginning of answers to questions she was only starting to know how to ask. The instructor began his lesson on radio protocols, and Maya dutifully took notes, but her mind was elsewhere, already moving toward dawn and the next chapter of a story that had begun long before she was born. That evening, after lights out, Maya lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling and trying to organize her thoughts. The barracks was full of the usual sounds: snoring, the rustle of blankets, someone whispering into a contraband cell phone 3 bunks down. Normal sounds of normal people living normal lives. Tomorrow she would step away from all of this into something that felt like science fiction. Hey, Torres' voice was barely audible. You awake? Yeah. Whatever happened today, whatever they told you, you can talk to me about it. If you want to. Maya smiled in the darkness. Jessica Torres was the kind of person who collected strays, the kid who couldn't make friends, the recruit who struggled with the physical training, anyone who seemed to need an ally. She'd taken Maya under her wing from the first day, and their friendship had been one of the few bright spots in the grinding routine of basic training. "I know," Maya whispered back, "but this is something I have to figure out on my own. Okay, just be careful, all right? When the brass singles you out like this, it usually means they want something." Torres was more right than she knew, but Maya couldn't explain that without revealing things she'd been specifically ordered not to discuss. Instead, she reached across the narrow gap between their bunks and squeezed her friend's hand. "I'll be careful," she promised. But as sleep finally began to claim her, Maya wondered if careful was even possible anymore. She'd spent her whole life being careful not to stand out, careful not to ask for too much, careful to keep her head down and avoid drawing attention. Yesterday had shattered that approach to life as thoroughly as her bullets had shattered the center of that target. Tomorrow would require a different kind of courage entirely. The last thing she remembered before sleep was the weight of the rifle in her hands and the absolute certainty that had guided each shot. Whatever was coming, whatever Project Looking Glass would demand of her, she would meet it with the same instinctive confidence. After all, it was apparently in her blood. Building 12 looked identical to Building 4, from the outside another nondescript concrete structure that could have housed anything from vehicle maintenance to administrative offices. But as Maya approached at 0555 the next morning, she noticed details that spoke of a different purpose entirely. The windows were smaller and set higher than normal, reinforced with what looked like bulletproof glass. Security cameras tracked her movement from multiple angles, and the keypad beside the main entrance required both a card swipe and biometric scan. A staff sergeant she didn't recognize opened the door before she could knock. Private Chen? The man was built like a prize fighter, with scars on his knuckles and the alert eyes of someone who'd seen combat. "I'm Staff Sergeant Kowalski. Follow me." The interior bore no resemblance to any army building Maya had ever seen. The hallways were carpeted rather than linoleum, the walls painted in muted colors that somehow felt more civilian than military. Doors bore no identifying marks or numbers, just discreet card readers that blinked red as they passed. "Where are we going?" Maya asked. "Orientation," Kowalski replied without turning around. "Major Patterson will brief you on the program structure. After that, you'll meet your team." "My team?" Kowalski stopped at an unmarked door and swiped his card. "You didn't think you were the only one, did you?" The door opened onto a conference room that managed to be both high-tech and comfortable. A massive display screen dominated one wall, currently showing what appeared to be satellite imagery of various global locations. The conference table could seat perhaps 20 people, though only 6 chairs were currently occupied. Major Patterson stood at the head of the table, looking exactly as academic as he had the day before. But the 5 people seated around the table were unmistakably military, despite wearing civilian clothes. They turned to look at Maya as she entered, and she felt the weight of professional assessment from each pair of eyes. "Private Chen, welcome to Project Looking Glass. Please take a seat." Major Patterson gestured to an empty chair. "Let me introduce you to your teammates." The woman closest to Maya looked to be in her late 20s, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and the lean build of a distance runner. Sergeant First Class Sarah Martinez, formerly of the 75th Ranger Regiment. Sarah demonstrates exceptional tracking and reconnaissance abilities that appear to derive from Apache ancestry on her father's side. Sarah nodded at Maya with a slight smile. "Welcome to the freak show. Staff Sergeant David Kim, Special Forces." The Asian man across from Sarah had the quiet intensity Maya was beginning to associate with elite soldiers. David's great-grandfather was a sniper with the Chinese Nationalist Army. David himself can calculate wind, drift and bullet drop with mathematical precision that exceeds most ballistic computers. Maya felt a flutter of recognition. Another marksman, another person whose abilities seemed to come from nowhere. Corporal James Reeves, Marine Force Recon. The black man at the far end of the table was perhaps the largest person Maya had ever seen in person, at least 6'6" and built like a defensive lineman. James can navigate complex terrain without instruments, following geographical features and natural signs with an accuracy that his ancestors would have recognized. His great-great-grandfather was a scout for the Union Army during the Civil War. Specialist Lisa Hoffman, combat engineer. The blonde woman next to James looked deceptively delicate until Maya noticed her hands calloused and scarred in ways that spoke of working with dangerous materials. Lisa has an intuitive understanding of structural engineering and demolitions that appears to derive from German ancestry. Her grandfather was a bridge engineer who served with the Wehrmacht. Maya's eyebrows rose. Wehrmacht? Complicated family history, Lisa said with a wry smile. But explosives don't care about politics. And finally, Sergeant Marcus Webb, Army. Intelligence. The last man was perhaps Maya's age, with the kind of unremarkable appearance that would make him invisible in a crowd. Marcus demonstrates cryptographic and linguistic abilities that seem to stem from his Welsh heritage. His great-grandfather was a codebreaker with British intelligence during World War II. Major Patterson took his seat at the head of the table. What you're looking at, Private Chen, is the most unique military unit in the world. Each person in this room possesses capabilities that shouldn't exist based on their training and background. Together, you represent nearly a century of specialized knowledge that has somehow survived the passage of generations. Maya looked around the table again, seeing her teammates in a new light. Each face held the same mixture of confidence and bewilderment. She'd felt since yesterday people who discovered they were capable of things they couldn't explain. "How long have you all been here?" she asked. "I was the first," Sarah said. "Been with the program for 3 years now. Found out about my tracking abilities during Ranger selection. Instructors couldn't figure out how. I was navigating terrain in complete darkness without night vision." 2 years for me, David added. "Sniper school. I was consistently outperforming shooters with years more experience, making shots that should have been impossible given the environmental conditions." 18 months, James said. "Force recon. Training. Could find my way through jungle terrain that had other Marines lost within minutes." "A year," Lisa chimed in. "They noticed when I kept identifying structural weaknesses in buildings that required extensive analysis for other engineers to spot." 8 months, Marcus finished. "Language immersion training. I was picking up linguistic patterns and encryption methods faster than people who'd been studying them for years." Maya absorbed this information, feeling both relieved and overwhelmed. "So none of you understood what was happening when it first started?" "Not a clue," Sarah laughed. "I thought I was just naturally good at land navigation. Took the program's research team to help me understand that I was actually following tracks and signs that my conscious mind couldn't even see." Major Patterson activated the display screen, showing what appeared to be a complex family tree diagram. "These abilities manifest under stress. Military training triggers dormant capabilities. But how is it possible?" Maya asked. "Skills aren't supposed to be inherited." "Not skills, exactly," Major Patterson said. "But the neurological structures that support those skills absolutely can be. Think of it as inherited potential genetic predispositions toward certain types of enhanced performance that require the right trigger to activate." The screen changed to show brain scans, areas of activity highlighted in different colors. "Each of you shows unusual neural activity in regions associated with your particular abilities. Maya, your brain processes spatial and ballistic information in ways that are frankly unprecedented. Sarah's visual cortex processes environmental data with exceptional efficiency. David's mathematical processing centers operate at levels we typically see only in individuals with savant syndrome. Maya stared at the brain scans, trying to process the implications. You're saying we're all some kind of genetic anomaly. You're saying we're the next step in human evolution, James said with a grin. At least, that's how I choose to look at it. The truth is probably more prosaic, Major Patterson said. Warfare selected for exceptional abilities across history. Survivors passed on genetic advantages. Lisa leaned forward. The question is, what do we do with it now that we know? That, Major Patterson said, is why you're all here. Project Looking Glass has two primary missions. First, to understand the full extent of these inherited capabilities and learn how to reliably activate them in others. Second, to develop those capabilities for operational use in the field. The screen changed again, showing satellite imagery of what appeared to be a training facility. Over the next several months, you'll undergo specialized training designed to enhance and refine your natural abilities. You'll learn to work as a team, combining your individual strengths into a unified capability that exceeds the sum of its parts. Maya felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with apprehension. What kind of missions? The kind that regular military units can't handle, Sarah said. Deep reconnaissance in hostile territory. Precision operations that require capabilities no one expects. Situations where conventional approaches have failed. We're still in the development phase, Major Patterson added. Each of you represents years of research and training investment. But the ultimate goal is to create a new model for special operations, teams built around inherited capabilities rather than just acquired skills, Marcus spoke up. It's not just about the abilities themselves. It's about the psychological profile that goes with them. We all share certain characteristics, the ability to remain calm under extreme pressure, exceptional situational awareness, an almost instinctive understanding of tactical situations. Like we've done this before, David added quietly. The room fell silent. Maya understood exactly what he meant, that sense of familiarity she'd felt on the firing range, as if her hands remembered something her mind had never learned. In a very real sense, you have done this before, Major Patterson said. Your ancestors' survival wisdom now expresses itself through you. Maya looked around the table at her new teammates, seeing them not just as individuals, but as carriers of history, living repositories of capabilities forged in the crucible of human conflict. It was both humbling and terrifying. So what happens now? She asked. Major Patterson smiled. Now you learn what you're really capable of. The training facility was hidden in plain sight, a complex of buildings and ranges that appeared to be part of the standard Fort Benning infrastructure, but were actually operated by Project Looking Glass. Maya's first week was a whirlwind of assessments, medical examinations, and psychological evaluations designed to establish baseline measurements for her various capabilities. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the program's chief researcher, was a neuropsychologist who approached Maya's abilities with the enthusiasm of someone who'd found the key to a puzzle she'd been working on for years. The fascinating thing about your case, Dr. Vasquez explained as she reviewed Maya's test results, is the breadth of your inherited capabilities. Most of our subjects show enhancement in very specific areas. Your marksmanship abilities are just the most obvious manifestation of a much broader genetic inheritance. Maya was seated in what looked like a high-tech dentist chair, electrodes attached to her scalp while computers monitored her brain activity. What do you mean? Your spatial processing abilities are off the charts. You can calculate complex ballistic trajectories intuitively, but you can also assess three-dimensional environments with exceptional accuracy. Your hand-eye coordination scores are literally unprecedented in our database. And your stress response patterns suggest an almost supernatural ability to remain calm under pressure. The implications were staggering. Maya had always been good at video games, had never gotten lost even in unfamiliar places, had remained composed during emergencies that left others panicking. She'd attributed all of it to personality traits or coincidence. How much of this was always there? She asked. Probably most of it, just waiting for the right trigger to bring it to conscious awareness. Military training, particularly the stress of weapons qualification, created the perfect conditions for these abilities to emerge. Dr. Vasquez showed her brain scans on a tablet, areas of activity highlighted in brilliant colors. Look at this when you're engaged in marksmanship activities. Your brain shows synchronized activity across multiple regions that normally operate independently. It's as if your entire neurological system has been optimized for this specific type of performance. Maya stared at the images, trying to reconcile the scientific evidence with her subjective experience. It doesn't feel supernatural. It feels normal. Like this is how I'm supposed to be. That's perhaps the most remarkable aspect of all this. Your brain has integrated these capabilities so completely that they feel natural rather than extraordinary. It suggests that whatever genetic basis underlies these abilities, it's been part of human neurological architecture for a very long time. The training itself was unlike anything Maya had experienced in basic training. Where her previous instruction had focused on standardized procedures and uniform responses, Project Looking Glass training was individualized, designed to explore and enhance each person's unique capabilities. Her marksmanship training with David Kim pushed her abilities to levels that seemed to defy physics. They worked with weapons she'd never imagined, rifles capable of precision at distances measured in kilometers, in environmental conditions that would challenge the most advanced computer-guided systems. Don't think about the math, David instructed. As they prepared for a shot at 1,200 meters in crosswinds that made the flags snap like whips, feel the trajectory. Your brain is processing more variables than you could consciously calculate in an hour. Trust it. Maya settled into her shooting position, letting her breathing slow to match the rhythm David had taught her. The target was barely visible through her scope, a silhouette wavering in the heat shimmer. Wind gusts pushed at her from multiple directions, each one requiring micro-adjustments that her conscious mind couldn't track, but something deeper than consciousness was tracking them. She could feel the air currents like invisible rivers, could sense the exact moment when the wind would pause long enough for a clean shot. Her finger found the trigger at precisely the right instant, and the rifle bucked against her shoulder. With familiar authority. Dead center, David said, lowering his spotting scope. In conditions that would challenge most computer-guided systems. How? Maya asked, genuinely curious. Your great-grandfather, probably. Maybe great-great-grandfather. Someone who needed to make shots like that to survive, and who survived long enough to pass on the genetic basis for that capability. The thought of unknown ancestors, soldiers, whose skills had somehow found their way into her hands across decades or centuries, sent a chill down Maya's spine. She was carrying forward capabilities forged in conflicts she could barely imagine, refined by pressure she'd never face. Training with Sarah Martinez opened up entirely new dimensions of awareness. What Maya had thought of as good observation skills turned out to be a comprehensive ability to read environmental information that most people couldn't even see. You're not just looking, Sarah explained as they moved through a mock urban environment designed to test reconnaissance abilities. You're processing every detail, every inconsistency, every indication that something is out of place. Your brain is building a three-dimensional model of the environment and continuously updating it with new information. Maya found herself noticing things she'd never consciously observed before, the way shadows fell across doorways, indicating the time of day and season, the patterns of wear on pavement that revealed foot traffic, the subtle variations in dust, and debris that showed where people had been and where they were likely to go. It's like reading a book, she said wonderingly. Exactly. And the more you practice, the more fluent you'll become in the language. Working with James Reeves revealed capabilities Maya hadn't even suspected. His navigation abilities weren't just about knowing directions. He could read terrain like a topographical map, understanding how water would flow where cover could be found, which routes would provide the best fields of fire or the quickest escape routes. Your spatial processing abilities work on multiple scales simultaneously, he explained as they studied satellite imagery of various global locations. You can calculate bullet trajectories at the micro level, but you can also assess tactical terrain at the macro level. It's the same underlying capability, just applied differently. Maya found herself able to look at unfamiliar terrain and immediately understand its tactical implications. Where snipers might hide, which approaches would be most vulnerable to ambush, how weather patterns would affect operations. Knowledge she'd never learned, appearing in her mind as if it had always been there. Lisa Hoffman's expertise in demolitions and structural engineering opened up yet another dimension of inherited capability. What had seemed like completely separate skills began to reveal themselves as different applications of the same underlying spatial and mathematical abilities. Look at this building, Lisa said as they studied the blueprint of a fictional target. Structure. What do you see? Maya examined the plans, letting her mind work without conscious direction. Gradually, she began to perceive patterns, load-bearing elements, critical joints, points where minimal intervention could produce maximum effect. The third-floor supports are over-engineered, she said slowly. But the second-floor connection points are vulnerable. If you compromise the eastern support column and the central beam simultaneously, the entire floor would collapse in a controlled manner, bringing down the floors above it, Lisa finished. You just conducted a structural analysis that would take most engineers hours of calculation. Marcus Webb's work with codes and languages revealed the final piece of Maya's inherited puzzle. Her brain's pattern recognition abilities extended far beyond spatial and ballistic calculations into the realm of symbolic and linguistic analysis. Cryptography is just pattern recognition applied to information instead of physical systems, Marcus explained as he showed her various code samples. Your brain processes symbolic relationships the same way it processes ballistic trajectories, intuitively, holistically, with an understanding that exceeds conscious analysis. Maya found herself able to spot patterns in encrypted communications, to recognize linguistic structures in languages she'd never studied, to understand the logical frameworks underlying various coding systems. It was as if her ancestors had been not just warriors, but scholars and analysts whose intellectual capabilities had been passed down, alongside their combat skills. After 3 weeks of intensive training and assessment, Major Patterson called the team together for a comprehensive briefing on their progress. What we've learned, he began, exceeds our most optimistic projections. Each of you has demonstrated capabilities that represent not just individual enhancement, but synergistic potential when working as a team. The display screen showed a complex diagram mapping the relationships between team members' abilities. Maya's spatial processing capabilities complement David's ballistic expertise and James's terrain analysis. Sarah's reconnaissance skills integrate with Lisa's structural assessment abilities. Marcus's pattern recognition ties everything together by identifying informational relationships that others might miss. Maya studied the diagram, beginning to understand how their individual strengths could combine into something greater than the sum of its parts. But capabilities are only half the equation, Major Patterson continued. The other half is operational readiness. It's time to test your abilities in realistic scenarios. The screen changed to show satellite imagery of what appeared to be hostile urban environment. Your first field exercise will take place in 2 weeks. You'll be inserted into a complex scenario that will require all of your capabilities working in coordination. The objective will be classified until the day of the operation. Maya felt a familiar tingle of anticipation mixed with apprehension. After weeks of training and assessment, they were finally going to discover what they could accomplish as a team. Questions? Major Patterson asked. Sarah raised her hand. What's the success criteria? How will we know if we've met the mission? Objectives? The same way your ancestors did, Major Patterson replied. You'll either complete the mission and return home, or you won't. The blunt honesty of the statement sent a chill through the room. This wasn't training anymore, it was preparation for real-world operations, where their inherited capabilities would be tested against actual threats. Maya looked around the table at her teammates, seeing them now not just as individuals with extraordinary abilities, but as a unit forged from the accumulated wisdom of generations of warriors, scouts, engineers, and analysts. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, carrying forward capabilities that had been tested in the crucible of human conflict and refined across decades of survival. The next phase of their journey was about to begin, the final week before their first field exercise was spent in intensive team training, learning to coordinate their individual abilities into unified operational capability. The training scenarios grew progressively more complex, requiring split-second decisions and flawless execution under extreme stress. Maya found herself naturally falling into a leadership role, her spatial processing abilities allowing her to maintain tactical awareness of the entire team's positioning and status. It wasn't something she'd consciously sought. The role had simply emerged from the dynamics of their collective capabilities. You're thinking like a field commander, Sarah observed after a particularly complex exercise that had required coordinating simultaneous reconnaissance, demolition, and extraction operations. Where did that come from? Maya considered the question seriously. Throughout the exercise, she'd found herself intuitively understanding not just her own role, but how each team member's actions fit into the larger tactical picture. She'd been able to anticipate problems before they developed, to coordinate timing across multiple simultaneous operations, to maintain strategic perspective even while engaging in detailed technical tasks. I don't know, she admitted. It just feels familiar. Dr. Vasquez, observing from the control room, provided a possible explanation during their post-exercise debrief. Leadership capabilities can be inherited just like any other skill set. If your ancestors included officers or field commanders, those decision-making patterns could be part of your genetic inheritance. The thought was both thrilling and sobering. Maya had never seen herself as a leader, had always been content to follow others' directions and avoid responsibility for major decisions. But something about coordinating her team's unique capabilities felt completely natural, as if she'd been preparing for it her entire life without knowing it. The team had evolved into a unified system. David handled precision work, Sarah gathered intelligence, James navigated complex terrain, Lisa managed technical challenges, and Marcus analyzed information flow. Together, they represented a new model for military operations, a unit built around inherited capabilities rather than just acquired skills, able to accomplish missions that conventional forces couldn't even attempt. The night before their first real operation, Maya lay in her bunk thinking about how much had changed since that day on the firing range. 3 months ago, she'd been just another recruit struggling through basic training, focused on nothing more complex than qualifying with standard weapons and surviving the daily grind of military life. Now she was part of something that felt like the leading edge of human potential, carrying forward capabilities that connected her to ancestors she'd never known, preparing for missions that would test abilities she was still learning to understand. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Jessica Torres, still back in basic training. Heard you got selected for some kind of special program. Hope you're kicking ass wherever you are. Maya smiled, thinking about how to respond. She couldn't explain Project Looking Glass. couldn't describe the genetic inheritance that had changed her life, couldn't share the details of training that pushed the boundaries of human capability. "Doing fine," she texted back. "Learning things I never knew I could do." It was both completely honest and completely inadequate to describe what had happened to her life. Tomorrow would bring their first real test, a field exercise that would determine whether their inherited capabilities could translate into operational success. Maya felt the familiar tingle of anticipation she'd learned to associate with moments when her abilities were about to be challenged. But this time, she wouldn't be facing that challenge alone. She had 5 teammates whose own inherited capabilities complemented and enhanced her own, creating possibilities that none of them could achieve individually. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would meet it together, carrying forward the accumulated wisdom of generations of warriors, scouts, engineers, and leaders who had survived the ultimate test of human conflict. The next phase of their journey was about to begin. Creating these stories takes significant time and effort. If you're enjoying this, please like, share, and subscribe. The mission briefing took place in a room Maya had never seen before, deep underground beneath Building 12. The space felt more like a military command center than anything she'd encountered. In regular Army facilities, multiple screens displaying real-time intelligence feeds, the mission briefing took place in a room Maya had never seen before. Deep underground beneath Building 12, Colonel Hayes was waiting with a folder marked "Classified" and 2 officers Maya didn't recognize. "Equipment first," Colonel Hayes began, gesturing to a table covered with specialized gear. "Maya, your weapon system has been calibrated specifically for high-altitude operations. David, your scope includes atmospheric compensation for mountain conditions." After reviewing their gear, he activated the main screen. "Your first operational assignment, a CIA asset missing in eastern Afghanistan, held at a Taliban stronghold 40 kilometers northwest of Kandahar." Maya felt her heart rate increase. Afghanistan. Real enemies, real consequences, real potential for things to go catastrophically wrong. The asset possesses intelligence critical to ongoing operations in the region. Multiple conventional rescue attempts have been planned and scrapped due to the complexity of the target location and the strength of enemy defenses. Colonel Hayes clicked to the next image, showing detailed topographical maps. "This is where your unique capabilities become relevant." The terrain was staggering rocky mountains cut by deep valleys, with the target compound positioned on a ridge that commanded views in all directions. Approaches that would be obvious to conventional forces were clearly covered by established defensive positions. Sarah, handle reconnaissance and approach routes. James, terrain analysis and navigation. Lisa, structural assessment and entry points. Marcus, communication security. David, long-range precision support. Marcus was already making notes, his mind clearly working through the information warfare implications. David, the defensive positions include long-range capabilities that exceed standard infantry weapons. Your marksmanship will be essential for neutralizing threats at distances where conventional support would be ineffective. David studied the satellite imagery with the focused attention of someone calculating angles and distances. "Maya," Colonel Hayes turned to her last, "your spatial processing and leadership capabilities will coordinate all of these specialized skills into unified operational effectiveness. This mission requires the kind of tactical integration that your inherited abilities make possible." Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. This wasn't training anymore. People's lives would depend on decisions she made in the field. "The objective is straightforward," Colonel Hayes continued. "Infiltrate the compound, locate and extract the CIA asset, neutralize any intelligence that might compromise ongoing operations, and return to friendly territory. Time window is 36 hours from insertion." Major Patterson activated another screen showing logistical details. You'll be inserted by helicopter at a landing zone, approximately 15 kilometers from the target. Extraction will be at a different location to avoid predictable patterns. Weather window is favorable for the next 48 hours, but conditions can change rapidly in that region. Maya raised her hand. Rules of engagement. Lethal force is authorized against any personnel presenting hostile intent. However, the mission requires stealth and precision rather than direct confrontation. Ideally, you'll complete the extraction without the enemy being aware of your presence until after you've departed. The challenge was immense. Infiltrate a heavily defended position, locate a specific individual in unknown conditions, and extract, without triggering a response that could compromise the operation or endanger the team. Equipment? Sarah asked. Specialized gear tailored to your individual capabilities. Maya and David will have precision weapon systems optimized for their marksmanship abilities. Sarah will have advanced reconnaissance equipment, including thermal and low-light enhancement. James will have navigation and communications gear designed for complex terrain. Lisa will have structural analysis tools and specialized demolitions equipment. Marcus will have electronic intelligence gathering and communication security equipment. Colonel Hayes paused, letting the full scope of the mission sink in. This operation will test not just your individual capabilities, but your ability to function as an integrated unit under extreme conditions. Everything you've trained for over the past months will be put to the ultimate test. Maya looked around at her teammates, seeing the same mixture of excitement and apprehension she felt. This was why they'd been brought together, why Project Looking Glass existed to accomplish missions that conventional forces couldn't handle. Questions? Colonel Hayes asked. Lisa raised her hand. Intelligence on enemy strength and capabilities? Estimated 30 to 50 personnel, mix of Taliban fighters and foreign advisors. Weapons include small arms, rocket-propelled grenades, and at least one heavy machine gun position. Defensive preparation suggests they're expecting conventional assault approaches. Communication security? Marcus asked. You'll have encrypted communications with base, but assume all enemy communications are monitored and analyzed. Your operational security depends on avoiding detection rather than secure communications. David spoke up. Rules for collateral damage? Minimize civilian casualties, but the primary objective is asset recovery. Use your best judgment, but remember that failure to complete the mission could compromise ongoing operations affecting thousands of lives. The briefing continued for another hour, covering everything from weather patterns to cultural considerations to contingency plans for various failure modes. By the time they were dismissed, Maya's head was spinning with tactical details and operational complexities. Deployment in 18 hours, Colonel Hayes said as they prepared to leave. Use the time to finalize equipment preparations and conduct final team coordination. This is what you've been training for. Now we find out what you're really capable of. The 18 hours before deployment passed in a blur of equipment checks, tactical planning sessions, and individual preparation. Maya found herself moving through the familiar rituals of pre-mission preparation, but with an intensity she'd never experienced before. Every detail mattered now in ways that training scenarios could never replicate. Dr. Vasquez pulled her aside for a final psychological assessment, checking her stress indicators and mental preparedness. How are you feeling? Dr. Vasquez asked as she reviewed Maya's vital signs on a portable monitoring device. Scared, Maya admitted, but also ready. Like this is what I've been preparing for my entire life, even when I didn't know it. That's exactly what I'd expect to see. Your stress response patterns are remarkably stable, elevated, but controlled, indicating optimal readiness rather than anxiety. Dr. Vasquez made notes on her tablet. Your inherited capabilities appear to include not just technical skills, but the psychological resilience necessary to employ those skills under extreme pressure. Maya thought about her grandfather again, wondering what kinds of pressures he'd faced, what situations had required the capabilities she'd inherited. The connection across generations felt more real now, more immediate, as if she were about to walk in footsteps that had been laid down decades before her birth. The equipment briefing revealed just how specialized their gear had become. Maya's primary weapon was a custom rifle system that looked like it had been designed by engineers who understood exactly how her abilities worked. The balance was perfect. The optics integrated seamlessly with her natural targeting instincts, the entire system optimized for the kind of precision shooting that had first revealed her capabilities. This weapon was designed specifically for your neurological patterns, the armorer explained. The trigger response, sight alignment, and recoil characteristics are all calibrated to work with your inherited spatial processing abilities. Maya shouldered the rifle, feeling it settle into position as if it had been made for her body. Which, in a very real sense, it had been. David's equipment was equally specialized but different, optimized for the ultra-long-range precision that was his particular strength. Where Maya's weapon was designed for rapid engagement of multiple targets, David's was built for single shots at distances that challenged the laws of physics. Each team member received specialized equipment, designed to enhance their genetic capabilities. Sarah's sensors, James's navigation systems, Lisa's precision demolitions kit, and Marcus's electronic warfare gear. Approach route, she began, studying the terrain maps projected on the conference room screen. James, what's your assessment? 3 viable options, James replied, tracing paths across the topographical display. Northern approach uses natural cover, but requires longer exposure to potential observation. Southern route is shorter, but crosses open ground for approximately 200 meters. Eastern approach follows a creek bed that provides concealment, but could be compromised if water levels change. Maya visualized each route, her spatial processing abilities building 3-dimensional models of the tactical implications. Sarah, which approach gives you the best reconnaissance opportunities? Northern route, Sarah said without hesitation. Multiple observation points, natural concealment for extended surveillance, optimal angles for assessing defensive positions. David. Engagement options? Northern approach provides the best long-range fields of fire. If we need to provide covering fire during extraction, I can establish overwatch positions that command the entire compound. Maya felt the tactical picture crystallizing in her mind, each element falling into place with the certainty she'd learned to trust. Northern approach. Sarah establishes reconnaissance at 0200. Team moves into final positions at 0400. Infiltration begins at 0500. Infiltration method? Lisa asked. Maya studied the structural intelligence again, her inherited understanding of spatial relationships revealing possibilities that conventional tactical analysis might miss. Compound is built into natural rock formations. Lisa, can you identify entry points that avoid established defensive positions? Lisa examined the architectural data with professional concentration. Eastern wall shows signs of expansion construction, probably added onto natural cave systems. Original rock formations will have natural weak points that won't be covered by defensive preparations. I can create entry points that look like natural cave-ins rather than deliberate breaches. Communication security? Maya asked Marcus. Enemy. Uses standard Taliban communication protocols, radio frequencies, and encryption methods that follow predictable patterns. I can monitor their communications without revealing our presence, potentially identify guard rotation schedules, and alert. Patterns. Maya felt the tactical plan solidifying with each contribution from her teammates. This was what their inherited capabilities made possible: operational planning that integrated multiple specialized skills into unified effectiveness. Asset location is unknown within the compound, she continued. Once we're inside, we'll need to locate him quickly without compromising stealth. Sarah, can your reconnaissance abilities work in interior spaces? Absolutely. Heat signatures, sound patterns, even subtle changes in air circulation that indicate occupancy. If he's there, I'll find him. Extraction contingencies? David spoke up. If stealth is compromised, I can provide covering fire from overwatch positions while the team withdraws. Long-range precision capability gives us options that enemy forces won't expect. Lisa, if we need rapid extraction, can you create diversion or blocking actions? Controlled demolitions that channel enemy response while providing concealment for withdrawal. I can make it look like coordinated assault from multiple directions while the actual team extracts through predetermined routes. Maya looked around the table, seeing not just individual soldiers, but an integrated system of inherited capabilities that could accomplish missions beyond conventional military possibility. The planning session had revealed how naturally their abilities complemented each other, creating tactical options that none of them could achieve alone. Final equipment check in 4 hours, she said. Individual preparation time until then. Questions? There were none. Each team member understood their role, understood how their inherited capabilities fit into the larger operational picture, understood the stakes. As the briefing broke up, Colonel Hayes approached Maya privately. How do you feel about leading this operation? He asked. Maya considered the question seriously. 3 months ago, the idea of leading any military operation would have terrified her. Now it felt natural, inevitable, as if everything she'd experienced had been preparing her for exactly this moment. Ready, sir. Like this is what I was meant to do. Colonel Hayes nodded. Your grandfather would be proud. The comment caught Maya off guard. Sir? We've been researching your family history since you joined the program. Your grandfather wasn't just a soldier in the Chinese Civil War, he was a company commander who led specialized reconnaissance units behind enemy lines. Small teams with unique capabilities operating independently in hostile territory. Maya felt a chill of recognition. Just like this. Exactly like this. What you're about to do, he did for years during some of the most brutal fighting of the 20th century. You're not just inheriting his marksmanship abilities, you're inheriting his leadership experience. The weight of that revelation followed Maya through her final preparations. She wasn't just carrying forward individual skills, but command capabilities. Forged in desperate battles fought by someone whose blood ran in her veins. The confidence she felt about leading her team wasn't just personal, it was ancestral. The helicopter flight to the insertion point took place in complete darkness. The aircraft flying map of the Earth routes that avoided detection by enemy radar or observation. Maya and her team sat in silence, each focused on final mental preparation for what lay ahead. The landscape below was invisible, except for occasional glimpses revealed by the pilot's night vision systems, rocky mountains cut by deep valleys, terrain that had challenged invaders for thousands of years. Maya found herself thinking about all the soldiers who'd fought in these mountains, all the capabilities that had been tested against this unforgiving environment. 10 minutes to insertion, the pilot's voice crackled through their headsets. Maya felt her inherited abilities beginning to activate, her spatial processing system building, 3-dimensional models of the tactical environment based on the intelligence data she'd memorized. Even without visual reference, she could feel the geography around them, could sense the positioning and movement options that would be available once they were on the ground. Team check, she said quietly into her microphone. Sarah, ready. David, ready. James, ready. Lisa, ready. Marcus, ready. The helicopter began its final approach, the pilot using terrain masking to avoid detection while positioning for rapid insertion and immediate departure. Maya could feel the aircraft's movements translating into tactical information, wind speed and direction, landing zone conditions, potential threats, and escape routes. 30 seconds. Maya's team moved with practiced efficiency, checking equipment and preparing for immediate tactical movement once they hit the ground. The helicopter flared for landing, engines throttling back to minimize noise signature. Go, go, go. They were out of the aircraft and moving toward cover within seconds. The helicopter lifting off immediately to avoid creating a stationary target. Maya felt her inherited situational awareness expanding to encompass the entire tactical environment, her team's positions, potential threats, movement routes, fields of fire. James was already orienting them toward their objective, his terrain reading abilities providing navigation that was more precise than GPS. Sarah had vanished into the darkness, her reconnaissance capabilities beginning the intelligence gathering that would guide their approach. "Comes check," Maya whispered into her radio. "Sarah, I have eyes on the objective. Enemy activity is minimal, looks like standard guard rotation. I'm moving to establish overwatch position." David, establishing sniper position with clear fields of fire to the compound. "James, I've identified the approach route. Natural cover all the way to the perimeter." Lisa, studying the target structure. "I can see the entry points we discussed." Marcus, monitoring enemy communications. Standard patrol chatter, nothing indicating awareness of our presence. Maya felt the tactical picture building in her mind, each team member's capabilities contributing to a comprehensive understanding of the operational environment. This was what their inherited abilities made possible: tactical awareness that exceeded conventional military capabilities. "Move to phase line Alpha," she ordered. The team began their approach to the objective, moving through terrain that would have challenged elite units, but felt manageable with their combined inherited capabilities. James guided them along routes that avoided enemy observation while maintaining tactical positioning. Sarah provided continuous intelligence updates that kept them ahead of enemy activity patterns. Maya found herself naturally coordinating their movement, her inherited leadership capabilities integrating individual actions into unified tactical effectiveness. It felt like conducting an orchestra where each instrument played a part she could hear before it was performed. "Phase line Alpha," James reported. "Sarah, status?" "I have continuous visual on the compound. Guard positions are predictable. Rotation schedule is every 2 hours. I've identified the optimal entry point: eastern wall. Natural rock formation that Lisa can modify without alerting sentries." "Lisa, are you ready?" "Affirmative. I can create an entry point that looks like natural cave-in. No explosive signature. Minimal noise, complete concealment from exterior observation." Maya checked her chronometer. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan, their inherited capabilities, allowing them to maintain schedule and tactical advantage despite the complexity of the operation. Execute Phase 2. Lisa moved toward the compound wall, her structural analysis abilities guiding her to the precise points where minimal intervention would create maximum effect. Maya watched through her night vision as Lisa worked with tools and techniques that seemed to blend engineering with artistry. "Entry point established," Lisa reported. "Natural camouflage is perfect, looks like recent rockfall." Sarah, interior. "Reconnaissance?" "I'm detecting heat signatures consistent with 15 to 20 personnel. Most are in sleeping areas consistent with nighttime routine. I've identified what appears to be a separate containment area in the northeastern section, likely location for our asset." Maya felt her tactical awareness crystallizing into specific action requirements. "David, maintain overwatch. Marcus, continue communications monitoring. James, establish security perimeter. Sarah and Lisa, you're with me for interior operations." They slipped through Lisa's carefully crafted entry point into the compound's interior spaces. Maya's spatial processing abilities immediately began building three-dimensional maps of the internal structure, identifying movement routes, potential threats, and tactical options. The interior was a maze of natural caves connected by constructed Passages, exactly the kind of environment where their inherited capabilities provided maximum advantage. Sarah's reconnaissance abilities guided them through the complex, without triggering any of the security measures that would have detected conventional infiltrators. "Heat signature ahead," Sarah whispered. "Single individual, stationary, consistent with guard position." Maya moved forward, her inherited combat instincts taking over. The guard was positioned at a natural choke point, alert but not expecting infiltration from their direction. Maya's approach was silent, precise, using techniques that felt like genetic memory rather than learned skills. The guard was neutralized without alarm, Maya's inherited capabilities allowing her to disable threats with efficiency that surprised even herself. They continued deeper into the compound, following Sarah's reconnaissance toward the containment area she'd identified. "Target area ahead," Sarah reported. "I'm detecting 2 heat signatures, one consistent with guard, one with detained individual." Maya's tactical assessment revealed multiple options, but her inherited leadership instincts immediately identified the optimal approach. Hand signals directed Sarah and Lisa into supporting positions, while Maya prepared to neutralize the guard and secure the asset. The operation unfolded with mechanical precision. The guard was disabled silently. The detained individual, clearly the CI asset they'd been sent to extract, was secured and prepared for movement. The entire sequence took less than 3 minutes, accomplished without alerting any other personnel. "In the compound, asset secure," Maya reported into her radio. "Beginning extraction." "Copy that," David's voice came back. "I have clear overwatch, no enemy activity detected." Marcus here, enemy communications remain routine, no indication of compromise. They began their withdrawal through the compound's interior, retracing their route toward Lisa's entry point. Maya's spatial awareness kept track of their team's positioning while monitoring for any changes in the tactical environment. The CIA asset, a middle-aged man who looked like he'd been through significant ordeal, moved with them without resistance. His eyes held the gratitude of someone who'd given up hope of rescue, but he maintained operational discipline throughout the extraction. "Entry point in sight," Sarah reported. They slipped back through Lisa's carefully crafted breach into the exterior environment. Maya's inherited situational awareness immediately expanded to encompass the full tactical picture, her team's positions, potential threats, extraction routes. "Phase 3 withdrawal to extraction point," Maya ordered. James took point 4. The withdrawal, his terrain reading abilities, guiding them along routes that avoided enemy patrols while maintaining optimal speed toward their extraction zone. David provided overwatch during the initial phase of their movement, then displaced to new positions that covered their withdrawal route. The extraction proceeded flawlessly, their inherited capabilities allowing them to maintain tactical advantage throughout the operation. By the time enemy forces discovered the breach and missing asset, Maya's team was already at the extraction point, waiting for helicopter pickup. "Extraction bird inbound," the pilot's voice crackled through their radios. Maya looked back toward the compound, seeing lights beginning to appear as enemy forces responded to discovery of their operation. But the response was too late. Her team had accomplished their mission and withdrawn before the enemy could mount effective counteraction. "Outstanding work," Colonel Hayes's voice came through their communications as the helicopter lifted off. "Mission accomplished with 0 casualties and complete tactical success." Maya felt a profound sense of satisfaction, mixed with amazement at what they'd accomplished. 3 months ago, she'd been a struggling recruit who couldn't have imagined participating in operations like this. Now she'd successfully led a team with inherited capabilities in completing a mission that conventional forces couldn't have attempted. "Asset is secure and in good condition," she reported. "Team is intact and ready for further operations." But even as she said the words, Maya knew that this was just the beginning. They'd proven that their inherited capabilities could translate into operational success, that the genetic memories carried forward from their ancestors could be applied to modern military challenges. The implications were staggering. If people like her existed carriers of inherited capabilities forged in previous generations of conflict, then Project Looking Glass represented just the first step in understanding human potential that had been hidden for decades or centuries. As the helicopter flew them back toward friendly territory, Maya thought about her grandfather and the capabilities he'd passed down to her. She was no longer just inheriting skills, she was carrying forward a legacy of service and sacrifice that connected her to generations of warriors who'd faced impossible odds and found ways to prevail. The next phase of her journey was about to begin, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The debriefing following their first successful operation revealed just how significantly their capabilities exceeded conventional military expectations. Intelligence analysts who'd studied the compound for weeks were amazed by the precision with which Maya's team had identified and exploited weaknesses that sophisticated surveillance had missed. Your infiltration route avoided every sensor and observation point, Major Patterson explained as they reviewed satellite imagery of their operation. Your entry method was so precisely executed that enemy forces initially thought they were dealing with natural structural failure rather than deliberate breach. Colonel Hayes was present for the debriefing, along with several officers Maya didn't recognize, including a general whose presence suggested that Project Looking Glass was attracting attention at the highest levels of military command. The operational effectiveness you demonstrated, Colonel Hayes continued, represents a fundamental advancement in special operations capability. You accomplished in 6 hours what conventional forces estimated would require a full battalion and significant air support. Maya felt pride mixed with unease. Success brought recognition, but recognition brought scrutiny and expectations that might be difficult to meet. General Morrison, Colonel Hayes turned to the senior officer, would like to discuss expansion of Project Looking Glass based on your proven capabilities. General Morrison was a compact man with silver hair and the kind of intense focus that Maya had learned to associate with senior commanders who'd spent their careers making life and death decisions. The Pentagon is very interested in your results. General Morrison began without preamble. We're facing operational challenges around the world that require precisely the kind of capabilities you've demonstrated. The question is whether your success can be replicated on a larger scale. Maya exchanged glances with her teammates. They'd proven themselves as a unit, but the idea of expanding their model raised questions about whether their success was due to unique individual capabilities or something that could be systematically developed. Sir, Maya found herself speaking, our effectiveness comes from the combination of inherited capabilities and intensive specialized training. Each team member brings genetic potential that's been developed through months of individualized instruction. I'm not sure that model can be rapidly scaled. That's exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need, General Morrison replied. Dr. Vasquez, what's your assessment of the scalability question? Dr. Vasquez consulted her tablet before responding. Our research suggests that individuals with inherited capabilities, like those demonstrated by this team, exist throughout the military, but most remain unidentified because the right triggers haven't occurred. The challenge is developing screening methods that can identify potential candidates without the kind of dramatic revelation that brought Maya to our attention. Meaning, we need to create assessment protocols that can detect dormant inherited capabilities before they manifest naturally. Then we need to develop training programs that can reliably activate those capabilities in controlled environments. Maya felt a chill at the implications. They were talking about systematically identifying and developing people like her, creating programs that could produce teams with inherited capabilities on demand. What's the timeline for program expansion? Colonel Hayes asked. Pentagon wants operational capability within 18 months, General Morrison replied. 3 additional teams with capabilities equivalent to what we've seen from Project Looking Glass. Dr. Vasquez looked skeptical. General, with respect, this team represents 3 years of intensive research and development. Their individual capabilities were identified through exceptional circumstances and developed through highly specialized training. Replicating that process on an accelerated timeline presents significant challenges, which is why we're increasing resources and expanding research focus, General Morrison said. The operational advantages you've demonstrated are too significant to remain limited to a single team. Maya found herself thinking about the implications of program expansion. More people like her, with inherited capabilities that connected them to ancestors whose experiences had been forged in conflict. More individuals discovering that they carried forward genetic memories from generations of warriors, scouts, and specialists. What about the psychological aspects? Sarah Martinez spoke up. Discovering these capabilities, understanding their origin, learning to integrate them into conscious awareness, that's not something that can be rushed. Which is why we're bringing in additional psychological support resources, General Morrison replied. But the strategic imperative is clear. We need these capabilities in the field, and we need them soon. After the general departed, Maya's team remained in the briefing room with Major Patterson and Dr. Vasquez. The atmosphere had shifted from celebration of their success to concern about the direction the program might take. How do we feel about this expansion? Maya asked her teammates. Uneasy, David said immediately. Our effectiveness comes from understanding each other's capabilities and learning to integrate them over months of training. Rushing that process could compromise both individual development and team effectiveness. I'm concerned about the screening process, Marcus added. Identifying people with inherited capabilities requires understanding their genetic and psychological profiles in ways that could be invasive or problematic, Lisa nodded. And what happens to people who are identified but can't successfully develop their capabilities? There's got to be psychological fallout from learning you carry genetic memories you can't access. Maya looked at Dr. Vasquez. What's your professional opinion about accelerated expansion? Dr. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment before responding. Scientifically, I understand the desire to replicate your success. But psychologically, I'm concerned about the risks of rushing processes that we're still learning to understand. Each of you went through months of careful development to integrate inherited capabilities with conscious awareness. Shortcutting that process could produce individuals who are technically capable but psychologically unstable, meaning people with exceptional capabilities but without the psychological framework to employ them responsibly. That's potentially more dangerous than having no special capabilities at all. Major Patterson spoke up. The pressure for expansion is coming from operational necessity. We're facing global threats that conventional military capabilities can't address effectively. Your success has demonstrated that inherited capabilities could provide strategic advantages that change the balance of power. Maya understood the logic, but she also understood the risks. Their team had succeeded because they'd been given time to develop not just their individual capabilities, but their understanding of how those capabilities fit into larger tactical and strategic contexts. What if expansion fails? She asked. What if the accelerated timeline produces teams that can't perform at our level? Then the program continues with proven capability while we develop better methods for scaling success, Major Patterson replied. But the political and strategic pressure requires that we try. Over the following weeks, Maya watched Project Looking Glass transform from an experimental research program into something that felt more like military production. New personnel arrived daily, potential candidates for expanded teams, additional researchers, support staff for scaled operations, The screening process Dr. Vasquez had developed was implemented on a massive scale, with candidates drawn from throughout the military services. Maya and her teammates were asked to participate in evaluation sessions, helping to identify individuals who might possess inherited capabilities similar to their own. The results were mixed. Some candidates showed clear signs of dormant abilities that responded well to activation training. Others demonstrated potential that couldn't be reliably developed. Still others showed no indication of inherited capabilities despite family histories that suggested they should. It's not just genetics, Dr. Vasquez explained after a particularly frustrating screening session. It's the interaction between genetic potential, psychological readiness, and environmental triggers. We can identify the genetic markers, but we can't predict who will successfully integrate inherited capabilities into conscious awareness. Maya found herself increasingly involved in training new candidates, sharing her experience and helping others understand the process of capability development. It was rewarding work, but it also highlighted how unique their original team's success had been. Most of these people aren't ready for the kind of integration we've achieved, she told Major Patterson after a training session. They have the capabilities, but they don't have the psychological framework to employ them effectively. What would you recommend? Longer development timelines, more individualized training, better psychological support for the integration process. Maya paused. An acceptance that not everyone with inherited capabilities can be developed into operational effectiveness. Major Patterson nodded. That's not what the Pentagon wants to hear, but it's probably what they need to understand. The tension between operational demands and developmental reality came to a head during the first field exercise with expanded team candidates. Maya's original team was tasked with evaluating 3 new teams that had completed accelerated training programs. The exercise was designed to test basic operational capabilities in a controlled environment, nothing as complex as their Afghanistan mission, but sufficient to assess whether accelerated development had produced viable tactical units. The results were sobering. 2 of the 3 new teams failed to complete their objectives, struggling with coordination problems that Maya's team had never experienced. The 3rd team completed their mission, but with tactical decisions that raised concerns about their judgment and psychological stability. They have the capabilities, Maya reported to Colonel Hayes after the exercise, but they don't have the integration. They're trying to employ inherited abilities without understanding how those abilities fit into larger tactical and strategic contexts. Can additional training address these deficiencies? With time, probably, but not within the 18-month timeline the Pentagon has established. Colonel Hayes was quiet for a long moment. What would you recommend? Maya had been thinking about this question for weeks. Maintain the original program with proven capability while developing slower, more comprehensive methods for expanding success. Accept that inherited capabilities can't be mass-produced like conventional military skills. And, in the meantime, use our team for missions that require our unique capabilities while building understanding of how to identify and develop others like us more effectively. It was a recommendation that prioritized long-term success over short-term political pressures, but Maya believed it was the only approach that could maintain the operational effectiveness they demonstrated. Colonel Hayes nodded slowly. I'll present your assessment to General Morrison, but be prepared for the possibility that political pressures may override tactical recommendations. That evening, Maya found herself thinking about the implications of program expansion and the responsibilities that came with their proven capabilities. They'd succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, but success had brought attention and pressures that threatened to compromise the very factors that had made their success possible. Her inherited capabilities connected her to ancestors who'd faced similar challenges, the need to balance tactical effectiveness with strategic considerations, The pressure to achieve rapid results in situations that required careful development, whatever decisions the Pentagon made about program expansion. Maya knew that her team's role was far from over. They'd proven that inherited capabilities could provide strategic advantages, but they'd also learned that those advantages came with responsibilities that extended beyond any single mission or operation. The next phase of their journey would test not just their tactical abilities, but their understanding of how those abilities fit into larger questions about human potential and military effectiveness. General Morrison arrived with an urgent timeline. 72 hours, he announced. Without preamble, sliding a tablet across the table to Maya. Syria, urban environment, high-value target. Maya studied the tablet showing dense city imagery. Intelligence indicates a senior ISIS commander operating from eastern Syria. Multiple conventional attempts have failed. Timeline? Maya asked. Immediately, insertion during new moon window. Weather optimal for 6 days maximum. The images showed a dense city environment with complex terrain and multiple potential threats. The kind of operational challenge that would require every aspect of their inherited capabilities working in perfect coordination. Intelligence indicates a high-value target is operating from a location in eastern Syria. Multiple attempts by conventional special operations forces have failed due to the complexity of the operational environment and the sophistication of enemy defenses. Maya studied the satellite imagery, her inherited spatial processing abilities, immediately beginning to assess the tactical challenges. The urban environment was layered with natural and constructed obstacles, defensive positions that commanded multiple approaches, civilian populations that complicated engagement rules. Target intelligence, Sarah asked. A senior ISIS commander, responsible for coordinating terrorist operations throughout the region. Eliminating this individual could significantly disrupt enemy operational capability, but previous attempts have resulted in mission failure and casualties. David leaned forward. Why have conventional approaches failed? Combination of factors. Enemy intelligence network that provides advance warning of conventional assault approaches. Defensive positions that negate standard special operations. Tactics. Civilian population density that limits employment of supporting fires. Maya felt her inherited tactical awareness beginning to process the operational requirements. This was exactly the kind of mission their capabilities were designed to address. Complex environments where conventional approaches had proven inadequate. Timeline? She asked. 72 hours for mission planning, insertion during the new moon window next week. Weather conditions will be optimal for 6 days, then deteriorate significantly. Lisa studied the architectural intelligence. Urban environment presents different challenges than mountain terrain. Structural analysis will be critical for identifying approach routes and defensive weaknesses. Marcus nodded. Electronic warfare. Considerations will be more complex in urban environment. Enemy communications will be more sophisticated, but also more vulnerable to exploitation. James examined the topographical data. Terrain is flatter but more complex. Natural navigation. References will be limited, but urban geography provides different types of tactical information. Maya felt the tactical picture beginning to form in her mind, each team member's capabilities contributing to operational possibilities that conventional forces couldn't achieve. This mission would test everything they'd learned about integrating inherited abilities into unified effectiveness. Rules of engagement? She asked. Lethal force authorized against legitimate military targets. Civilian casualties must be minimized, but mission completion is essential for broader strategic objectives. General Morrison stood. This mission will determine whether Project Looking Glass capabilities can be employed against the most challenging operational requirements we face. Success will validate the program's strategic value. Failure will raise questions about continued investment in this approach. The weight of that statement settled over the briefing room. They weren't just conducting another mission, they were proving the continued viability of everything Project Looking Glass represented. "We understand, sir," Maya replied. "We'll complete the mission." After the general departed, Maya's team remained to begin initial mission planning. The tactical challenges were significant, but Maya found herself confident in their ability to develop effective approaches. "This is what we've been training for," she told her teammates. "Complex operational environment that requires everything we've learned about integrating our capabilities." "Urban terrain presents different challenges," James observed, "but also different opportunities. Enemy defensive preparations will be designed for conventional approaches. Our inherited capabilities should provide tactical advantages they won't expect." Sarah nodded. "Reconnaissance will be more complex, but also more comprehensive. Urban environment provides multiple information sources that my abilities can exploit. Structural analysis opportunities will be extensive," Lisa added. "Urban construction provides numerous tactical options for entry, concealment, and extraction." David studied the targeting data. "Long-range precision will be challenging in urban environment, but also potentially decisive. Enemy won't expect sniper capability from positions that conventional forces couldn't employ." Marcus examined the communications intelligence. "Electronic warfare opportunities are significant. Urban environment means extensive enemy communications that can be monitored and exploited." Maya felt her inherited leadership capabilities beginning to integrate their individual assessments into unified tactical understanding. This mission would require everything they'd learned about working as a team, but it would also push their capabilities into new areas they'd never explored. 72 hours to develop a plan that uses our inherited capabilities to accomplish what conventional forces couldn't achieve," she said. "Let's get to work." The mission planning session that followed was the most intensive they'd ever conducted, requiring detailed analysis of terrain, enemy capabilities, operational objectives, and tactical approaches. But Maya found herself energized by the challenge, confident that their inherited capabilities would provide solutions that conventional military planning couldn't identify. Whatever the outcome of this mission, it would determine the future direction of Project Looking Glass and their role in military operations that conventional forces couldn't handle. The next phase of their journey was about to begin, and Maya was ready to discover just how far their inherited capabilities could take them. Creating these stories takes significant time and effort. If you're enjoying this, please like, share, and subscribe. The mission to Syria represented a quantum leap in operational complexity. Where their Afghanistan operation had required infiltrating a remote compound with predictable defensive patterns, the Syrian mission demanded navigation through a hostile urban environment, where every building could conceal threats and every street corner presented tactical decision points. Maya's team spent the full 72 hours of mission planning, developing approaches that would employ their inherited capabilities in ways they'd never attempted before. The urban environment required new applications of skills they'd mastered in simpler operational contexts. The target building is a 6-story structure in the Old City District, Lisa explained as they studied architectural intelligence. Construction is traditional stone and concrete, but it's been modified with modern defensive features. Ground floor has been hardened against assault. Upper floors provide observation and fields of fire. Basement levels connect to tunnel systems that extend throughout the district. Maya visualized the 3-dimensional tactical challenges her inherited spatial processing abilities, building models of approach routes, defensive positions, and extraction options. The complexity was staggering, dozens of variables that had to be coordinated perfectly for mission success. Enemy strength is estimated at 20 to 30 personnel. Marcus continued, but they have access to reinforcements throughout the district. Communications network is sophisticated, with both electronic and human intelligence capabilities. Any compromise of our presence will result in immediate escalation of opposition. Sarah had studied surveillance imagery for hours. Her reconnaissance abilities identifying patterns that conventional intelligence had missed. Target follows predictable routine for security reasons. Same routes, same timing, same protective procedures. But those procedures are designed to defeat conventional assault approaches. David examined the tactical geography with the focused attention of someone calculating angles and distances across urban terrain. Long-range precision opportunities are limited by urban construction, but there are positions that could provide effective overwatch if we can reach them undetected. James traced potential movement routes across city maps with the concentration of someone reading terrain like a language. Urban navigation presents different challenges than natural terrain, but the principles are similar. Streets, buildings, and infrastructure create predictable flow patterns that can be exploited for tactical movement. Maya felt the operational plan crystallizing in her mind, each team member's capabilities contributing to tactical possibilities that conventional planning couldn't identify. But the complexity of the environment also meant more potential failure points, more opportunities for things to go catastrophically wrong. Insertion will be by civilian vehicle to avoid military signatures, she said. We'll establish safe house in the district, conduct final reconnaissance, then execute during evening prayer when street activity is minimal. What's our extraction plan? Sarah asked. Multiple contingencies depending on operational success and enemy response. Primary extraction by vehicle to predetermined rendezvous point. Secondary extraction on foot through tunnel systems that Lisa has identified. Tertiary extraction by helicopter from rooftop positions if ground routes are compromised. The briefing continued for another hour, covering contingencies for various failure modes and coordination procedures for complex urban operations. By the time they finished, Maya felt confident in their tactical approach but apprehensive about the operational challenges they'd face. Colonel Hayes joined them for final mission authorization. This operation represents the most challenging employment of Project Looking Glass capabilities to date. Success will validate the strategic value of inherited abilities in complex operational environments. Are you ready? Maya looked around at her teammates, seeing the same mixture of confidence and determination she felt. We're ready, sir. Then good hunting. Bring everyone home. The insertion into Syria was accomplished through diplomatic channels. That Maya wasn't clear to understand, but she found herself and her team transported by civilian aircraft to a location that looked suspiciously like a CIA safe house in a neighboring country. From there, they traveled by ground vehicle across borders that seemed to exist more in theory than practice. The transition from controlled training environments to genuine hostile territory was jarring. Every person they encountered could be an enemy agent. Every vehicle could contain surveillance equipment. Every building could conceal threats that would compromise their mission before it began. Maya felt her inherited situational awareness expanding to encompass threats and opportunities she'd never had to consider before. The urban environment was information-rich in ways that challenged her spatial processing abilities, requiring constant analysis of tactical variables that changed with every block they traveled. Safe house is 2 kilometers ahead, their driver said in accented English. He was local CIA asset whose identity Maya didn't know and didn't want to know. You will have 24 hours for final preparation before operational window opens. The safe house was a nondescript apartment building in a commercial district that provided perfect camouflage for their activities. The interior had been modified with communications equipment and intelligence, resources that would support their mission planning. Maya's team immediately began final reconnaissance using satellite feeds and local intelligence that had been updated within the past 6 hours. The target building showed no signs of unusual activity, but the surrounding district revealed defensive preparations that hadn't been visible in earlier intelligence. They've added security positions since our last update, Sarah observed, studying real-time surveillance imagery. Nothing obvious, but there are personnel in buildings that should be unoccupied. Vehicles positioned to provide rapid response, communications equipment that suggests coordination with broader defensive network. Do they know we're coming? David asked. Unlikely, Marcus replied after analyzing intercepted communications. But they're clearly maintaining heightened security posture. Our target is valuable enough to justify extensive protective measures. Maya felt her inherited tactical instincts processing the new information, adjusting their operational plan to account for enhanced enemy capabilities. We proceed as planned, but with additional caution during approach and extraction phases. What? If the security increases between now and operational execution? Lisa asked. Then we adapt. Our inherited capabilities give us tactical flexibility that conventional forces don't possess. We can modify approaches in real time based on changing conditions. The 24 hours of final preparation passed quickly. Maya found herself moving through the familiar rhythms of pre-mission routine, but with intensity that reflected the increased operational stakes. Everything they'd trained for, everything Project Looking Glass represented, would be tested in the next few hours. Dr. Vasquez had provided psychological support materials for managing stress in complex operational environments, but Maya found that her inherited capabilities included not just technical skills, but psychological resilience that seemed to come from genetic memory rather than conscious training. How are you feeling? Sarah asked as they completed final equipment checks. Ready, Maya replied honestly. Like everything we've done has been preparing us for exactly this situation. I know what you mean. It's like my ancestors are whispering tactical advice that I can't quite hear but somehow understand. That was exactly the sensation Maya had. Then experiencing a sense of familiarity with operational challenges she'd never faced before. Confidence in tactical decisions that exceeded her conscious knowledge. Team ready? She asked as they prepared to leave the safe house. Ready, came the reply from all 5 teammates. They moved out into the Syrian night, beginning the most challenging mission of their careers and the most significant test of Project Looking Glass capabilities ever attempted. The approach to the target district required navigating through urban terrain that challenged every aspect of their inherited abilities. Streets that appeared empty on surveillance imagery were filled with subtle signs of human activity that Sarah's reconnaissance capabilities could detect. Buildings that looked abandoned contained defensive positions that Lisa's structural analysis could identify. Every shadow could conceal threats. Every doorway presented tactical decision points. Maya found her inherited spatial processing abilities working overtime, building and constantly updating 3-dimensional models of the urban environment that integrated information from all her teammates. The complexity was unprecedented, dozens of variables changing in real time as they moved through hostile territory. Movement 2 blocks north, Sarah whispered into her radio. 3 personnel. Armed, following patrol pattern that suggests organized security rather than random activity. Confirmed, Marcus added. Radio intercepts indicate coordinated security sweeps throughout the district. They're not looking for us specifically, but they're maintaining heightened alert status. Maya felt her inherited leadership capabilities, processing the tactical information, weighing risks against operational requirements. The enemy security posture was more sophisticated than intelligence had indicated, but still within the parameters their inherited abilities could handle. James, alternate route assessment. Secondary approach route adds 15 minutes but avoids 3 potential observation points. Terrain is more complex but provides better concealment opportunities. Execute secondary route. David, can you maintain overwatch during approach? Affirmative. I've identified elevated position that provides fields of fire without compromising concealment. can establish overwatch within 10 minutes. Maya felt the tactical plan adapting in real time, their inherited capabilities allowing them to modify approaches based on changing conditions in ways that conventional forces couldn't match. This was what their genetic inheritance made possible: tactical flexibility that exceeded conscious planning. They moved through the urban environment with coordination that looked choreographed, but was actually the result of inherited capabilities, working in perfect synchronization. Each team member's abilities contributed to unified situational awareness that kept them ahead of enemy security measures. Target building visual, Sarah reported as they reached their final approach position. Security activity is consistent with intelligence estimates, but I'm detecting additional personnel in adjacent structures. Defensive preparations are more extensive than expected. Maya studied the target through her night vision system, her inherited abilities automatically calculating approach routes, defensive positions, and extraction options. The building was a fortress disguised as civilian architecture-hardened construction, concealed behind traditional facades. Defensive positions that commanded all obvious approaches, security measures that would challenge elite conventional forces. Lisa, structural assessment. Ground floor has been significantly reinforced, probably won't respond to standard demolition approaches. Upper floors maintain original construction but show signs of modification for defensive purposes. Basement levels connect to tunnel systems that extend throughout the district. Entry options? 3 possibilities. Primary entry through basement tunnel system requires underground approach but avoids exterior defenses. Secondary entry through adjacent building using structural weaknesses I can exploit. Tertiary entry through upper floors using repelling equipment, highest risk, but potentially decisive tactical advantage. Maya's inherited tactical instincts immediately identified the optimal approach. Primary entry through tunnel system. Sarah, can you guide us through underground approach? Affirmative. Tunnel systems show recent use, but current activity is minimal. I can navigate underground route to basement level of target building. David, establish overwatch position for extraction support. Marcus, monitor communications for any indication of compromise. James, security perimeter during infiltration phase. The team moved into final positions with the precision that months of training and inherited capabilities had made possible. Maya felt her spatial processing abilities, integrating all tactical variables into comprehensive situational awareness that exceeded anything she'd experienced before. Initiating infiltration, she reported into her radio. Sarah led them into the tunnel system through an access point that appeared to be maintenance infrastructure but actually connected to the network of passages beneath the old city. The underground environment challenged their abilities in new ways: confined spaces that limited movement options, acoustic properties that could betray their presence, structural features that required constant navigation adjustments. Maya found her inherited capabilities adapting to the underground environment, her spatial processing abilities, building 3-dimensional maps of tunnel systems that her conscious mind couldn't fully comprehend. It was like reading a language she'd never learned, but somehow understood. Target basement access ahead, Sarah whispered. I'm detecting minimal security presence. Looks like they're relying on exterior defenses rather than interior monitoring. Lisa, entry options? Structural weakness in basement wall allows for silent entry. I can create access point that won't trigger security systems or alert personnel in upper levels. Maya felt her inherited leadership instincts coordinating the final phase of infiltration. Everything they'd trained for, everything their genetic inheritance had prepared them for, was converging on this moment. Execute entry. Lisa worked with tools and techniques that seemed to blend engineering knowledge with artistic intuition, creating an access point through the basement wall that looked like natural structural failure rather than deliberate breach. They slipped into the target building's basement level. Maya's spatial processing abilities, immediately mapping the interior environment. The basement was a maze of storage areas and mechanical spaces that provided perfect concealment for their infiltration. Sarah's reconnaissance abilities guided them through the interior spaces, identifying threats and opportunities that conventional infiltrators would have missed. "Target is on 3rd floor, Sarah reported after analyzing heat signatures and acoustic patterns. Minimal security presence on lower levels. They're concentrating defensive efforts on approaches they expect conventional forces to use." Maya felt her inherited tactical awareness revealing opportunities that enemy defensive preparations hadn't anticipated. Their genetic capabilities allowed them to exploit vulnerabilities that conventional planning couldn't identify. Movement to target floor, maintain stealth protocols. They ascended through the building's interior using routes that Lisa's structural analysis had identified: service passages and maintenance areas that avoided security checkpoints and observation points. Maya's spatial processing abilities tracked their progress through 3-dimensional models that integrated architectural intelligence with real-time observations. "3rd floor access," Sarah whispered. "Target is in eastern room, 2 security. Personnel in adjacent spaces, minimal activity in remainder of building." Maya studied the tactical situation through her inherited abilities, seeing opportunities for decisive action that would accomplish their mission without alerting broader enemy security network. This was the moment when months of training and genetic inheritance would be tested against real-world operational requirements. Execute target neutralization. The operation unfolded with mechanical precision that seemed choreographed but was actually the result of inherited capabilities working in perfect coordination. Maya's team moved through the building's interior with tactical effectiveness that exceeded conventional special operations, accomplishing their primary objective without triggering enemy security responses. "Target neutralized," Maya reported into her radio, beginning intelligence collection and extraction preparation. But as they began searching the target location for intelligence materials, Maya's inherited situational awareness detected changes in the tactical environment that suggested their presence had been discovered. "Marcus, communication status? Enemy. Radio traffic is increasing. Nothing specific about our operation, but general alert level is rising throughout the district." "Sarah, exterior observation? Increased security activity in adjacent buildings. Vehicle movements that suggest organized response rather than routine patrol activity." Maya felt her inherited tactical instincts processing the information, recognizing that their operational window was closing faster than anticipated. The enemy security network was more sophisticated than intelligence had indicated, capable of detecting infiltration even when specific methods weren't identified. "Accelerate intelligence collection. Prepare for emergency extraction." Lisa was already working through the target location, her inherited capabilities allowing her to identify intelligence materials and security systems with efficiency that conventional searches couldn't match. But the sounds of increased enemy activity were growing closer, suggesting that organized response was imminent. "Intelligence collection complete," Lisa reported. "But enemy security is converging on this location. We have maybe 5 minutes before they identify our specific position." Maya's inherited leadership capabilities immediately began processing extraction options, weighing tactical risks against operational requirements. Their primary extraction route through the tunnel system would require time they might not have. Alternative extraction methods would involve direct confrontation with enemy security forces. "David, extraction support status? I have Overwatch position established, but enemy security is deploying in patterns that will compromise ground extraction routes. They're not specifically targeting us, but their security cordon will block tunnel access." Maya felt the tactical situation crystallizing into decision, requirements that would test every aspect of her inherited capabilities. Conventional extraction approaches had been compromised by enemy security responses. They needed tactical solutions that exceeded normal military options. Lisa, can you create alternative extraction route through building structure? Affirmative. Upper floor construction allows for roof access, which connects to adjacent buildings through architectural features that weren't visible in intelligence imagery. James, can you navigate alternative extraction route under enemy security pressure? Yes, but it will require movement through areas that are partially exposed to enemy observation. Timing will be critical. Maya felt her inherited tactical awareness integrating all variables into comprehensive understanding of their options. They could attempt extraction through compromised ground routes, or they could employ alternative methods that used capabilities enemy security forces wouldn't expect. Alternative extraction through upper levels. David, provide covering fire if we're compromised. Marcus, monitor communications for enemy response patterns. The team began moving toward Lisa's alternative extraction route, climbing through the building's interior toward roof access that would provide escape options unavailable to conventional forces. Maya's spatial processing abilities tracked their progress while monitoring enemy security patterns through multiple sensory inputs. Roof access achieved, Lisa reported. Adjacent building connections are available, but movement will be partially exposed to ground-level observation. Maya studied the tactical environment through her inherited capabilities, seeing opportunities and risks that exceeded conscious analysis. The enemy security cordon was tightening, but their deployment patterns reflected conventional threat expectations, rather than the capabilities her team actually possessed. Execute rooftop extraction. Maintain tactical spacing and use architectural concealment. They moved across the urban rooftops with coordination that seemed impossible under the circumstances, but was actually the result of inherited capabilities working in unified tactical effectiveness. Each team member's abilities contributed to navigation and concealment that kept them ahead of enemy security responses. Enemy security has identified our building, Marcus reported. Radio traffic indicates they're conducting systematic search of interior spaces, but they haven't identified our extraction route. Maya felt satisfaction mixed with continued tension. They'd accomplished their primary mission objective and initiated extraction, but they weren't clear of enemy territory until they reached their safe house. Continue extraction to predetermined rendezvous point. Maintain tactical awareness for enemy response escalation. The rooftop movement continued for another 20 minutes. Maya's team using architectural features and inherited capabilities to maintain concealment, while crossing terrain that would have been impossible for conventional forces to navigate undetected. Rendezvous point visual, James reported. Extraction vehicle is in position, area appears secure. They descended from the rooftops and moved toward their extraction vehicle. Maya's inherited situational awareness scanning for any indication that their escape route had been compromised. The enemy security response continued to focus on their target building, suggesting that their alternative extraction method had avoided detection. Extraction vehicle reached, Maya reported into her radio. Mission accomplished, team intact, intelligence secured. As their vehicle moved away from the operational area, Maya felt the profound satisfaction that came with successful completion of an impossible mission. They'd penetrated sophisticated enemy defenses, accomplished their operational objectives, and extracted without casualties or compromise. But she also understood that this success would bring increased attention and expectations that might be even more challenging than the mission they'd just completed. The debriefing following their Syrian operation revealed that Maya's team had accomplished something unprecedented in modern military history. Intelligence agencies across multiple nations had failed to penetrate the target location or neutralize the individual they'd eliminated in a single night. The intelligence you recovered, Colonel Hayes explained, has provided critical information about terrorist operations throughout the region. Your target was coordinating activities that could have resulted in thousands of casualties across multiple countries. General Morrison was present for the debriefing, along with several senior officials whose presence suggested that Project Looking Glass had attracted attention at the highest levels of government. The operational capability you've demonstrated, General Morrison continued, represents a fundamental advancement in our ability to address threats that conventional military forces cannot effectively engage. The question now is how to employ these capabilities on a larger scale. Maya felt the familiar tension between success and the pressures that success created. Each mission they completed successfully generated expectations for even more challenging operations. Sir, Maya found herself speaking, our effectiveness comes from the integration of inherited capabilities that required months of development and coordination. The tactical approaches we employ aren't just different from conventional operations, they're based on genetic inheritance that most people don't possess. Which brings us to the next phase of Project Looking Glass, General Morrison replied. We've identified 17 additional candidates with inherited capabilities similar to your team's. The question is whether we can develop their abilities rapidly enough to meet operational requirements. Dr. Vasquez looked skeptical. General, with respect, our research indicates that successful development of inherited capabilities requires individualized approaches that can't be standardized or accelerated without significant risks. What kind of risks? Psychological instability, resulting from forced activation of genetic memories. Tactical effectiveness compromised by inadequate integration of inherited abilities with conscious awareness. Physical stress responses that could result in permanent damage. Maya exchanged glances with her teammates. They'd seen some of these problems during the previous expansion attempts, but now they were talking about pushing development even further beyond proven methodologies. The strategic imperative is clear, General Morrison said. We're facing global threats that require capabilities beyond conventional military responses. Your team has proven that inherited abilities can provide decisive tactical advantages. We need to scale that success. At what cost? Sarah Martinez asked. We've seen what happens when development is rushed. People with inherited capabilities who can't effectively employ them are more dangerous than conventional soldiers. Which is why we're implementing enhanced screening and development protocols, General Morrison replied. But the operational requirements won't wait for perfect solutions. After the senior officials departed, Maya's team remained with Colonel Hayes and Dr. Vasquez to discuss the implications of accelerated expansion. How do we feel about training additional teams? Maya asked her teammates. Concerned, David said. Immediately. Our success comes from understanding each other's capabilities through months of integrated training. New teams won't have that foundation. I'm worried about the psychological pressure, Marcus added. Discovering inherited capabilities, learning to integrate them, understanding their origin, that's a process that can't be rushed without significant risks. Lisa nodded. And what happens when missions require capabilities that new teams haven't fully developed? People could die because of inadequate preparation. Maya looked at Dr. Vasquez. What's your professional assessment of the expansion timeline? Dangerous, Dr. Vasquez replied without hesitation. We're talking about activating genetic memories and inherited capabilities in people who haven't had time to develop psychological frameworks for integrating those abilities. The potential for catastrophic failure is significant. But the political pressure is immense, Colonel Hayes added. Success stories like your Syrian operation generate expectations for employing these capabilities across multiple operational theaters simultaneously. Maya found herself thinking about the broader implications of their success. They'd proven that inherited capabilities could provide decisive tactical advantages, but they'd also demonstrated that those capabilities required careful development. and integration that couldn't be mass-produced. "What if we developed a different approach?" she asked. "Instead of trying to create multiple teams immediately, what if we focused on identifying and developing individual specialists who could augment conventional forces?" Dr. Vasquez looked interested. "Explain that concept." "Rather than creating complete teams with inherited capabilities, we identify individuals with specific genetic inheritances and develop them as specialists who can be integrated with conventional units when their particular abilities are required." Colonel Hayes nodded slowly. "So instead of trying to replicate your team's comprehensive capabilities, we focus on developing individuals who can provide specific enhanced abilities, marksmanship, reconnaissance, navigation, structural analysis as needed." "Exactly. It would be more limited than our current capability, but it would also be more sustainable and less risky from a development perspective." The concept generated extensive discussion over the following weeks. Military planners recognized the advantages of the specialist approach. It would provide enhanced capabilities without requiring the intensive team integration that had made Maya's unit so effective but also so difficult to replicate. Dr. Vasquez began developing assessment protocols for identifying individuals with specific inherited capabilities rather than the comprehensive genetic inheritance that Maya's team represented. The results were promising. Many more people possessed specialized inherited abilities then demonstrated the broad genetic inheritance necessary for integrated team operations. "We're identifying candidates with exceptional marksmanship genetics, navigation inheritance, structural analysis capabilities, reconnaissance abilities," Dr. Vasquez reported. "Individually, they don't represent the comprehensive capability your team possesses, but they could provide significant enhancement to conventional units." Maya found herself increasingly involved in the development of these specialist candidates, sharing her experience and helping others understand how to integrate inherited capabilities with conventional military training. The work was rewarding, but also highlighted the unique nature of her team's comprehensive inherited abilities. Most candidates possessed inheritance in only one or two areas, requiring different development approaches and integration strategies. "It's like the difference between a complete orchestra and individual virtuoso musicians," she explained to Colonel Hayes. "Both have value, but they require different approaches and produce different results." The specialist development program proceeded more successfully than previous expansion attempts, producing individuals who could provide enhanced capabilities in specific operational contexts without requiring the comprehensive team integration that Maya's unit needed. But the strategic situation was evolving rapidly. Global threats were emerging that required not just enhanced capabilities, but the kind of integrated tactical effectiveness that only Maya's team had demonstrated. The emergency briefing began with Maya's team already seated when General Morrison burst through the door at 0530, South China Sea crisis. He announced, immediately activating wall displays showing artificial islands, Chinese installations threatening regional stability. "You deploy in 18 hours. Personnel assignments." Colonel Hayes took over. Maya leads infiltration team. David provides submarine overwatch. Sarah handles underwater reconnaissance approach. Rules of engagement are strict non-detection. General Morrison continued. Any compromise could trigger international incident. Intelligence gathering that provides comprehensive assessment of Chinese military capabilities in the region. We need to understand their defensive preparations, communications networks, and strategic intentions without triggering military escalation. Rules of engagement. Strict non-detection requirements. Any compromise of your presence could be interpreted as act of war. Mission must be accomplished without Chinese forces being aware of infiltration. Maya felt her inherited tactical instincts processing the operational requirements. This would be their most challenging mission, yet requiring capabilities that exceeded everything they'd accomplished before. Timeline? Intelligence indicates a 2-week window when defensive preparations will be reduced due to equipment, maintenance schedules. After that, enhanced security measures will make infiltration impossible. Colonel Hayes activated additional displays showing logistical and tactical details. You'll be inserted by submarine to avoid detection by Chinese radar and patrol systems. Extraction will be by the same method, but from different location to avoid predictable patterns. Maya looked around at her teammates, seeing the same mixture of excitement and apprehension she felt. This mission would test every aspect of their inherited capabilities against the most sophisticated military defenses in the world. We'll need extensive mission planning, she said. The tactical challenges exceed anything we've faced before. Agreed. You have 1 week for planning and preparation. This mission will determine whether Project Looking Glass capabilities can be employed against peer military adversaries rather than just terrorist organizations. As the briefing concluded, Maya understood that they were entering a new phase of their operational employment. They'd proven their effectiveness against conventional threats and terrorist organizations. Now they would discover whether their inherited capabilities could provide decisive advantages against modern military forces. The next phase of their journey would test not just their tactical abilities, but their understanding of how genetic inheritance could be employed in conflicts that could determine the balance of global power. The mission to the South China Sea represented the ultimate test of everything Project Looking Glass had developed. Maya's team spent the week of mission planning pushing their inherited capabilities into theoretical applications they'd never attempted before. The artificial islands are essentially aircraft carriers that can't move, Lisa explained as they studied the most recent intelligence imagery. Construction is military-grade reinforced concrete with defensive positions integrated into the basic architecture. Infiltration will require approaches that exploit structural features the designers never intended. Maya visualized the tactical challenges through her inherited spatial processing abilities, building 3-dimensional models of artificial islands that had been designed specifically to defeat military infiltration attempts. Submarine insertion presents unique challenges, James continued. Underwater approach requires navigation capabilities that account for artificial reef systems and defensive sonar networks. Once we reach the islands, movement will be across terrain that provides minimal natural concealment. Sarah studied surveillance imagery with her reconnaissance abilities, identifying patterns that conventional intelligence had missed. Security protocols are sophisticated but predictable. They're designed to defeat conventional infiltration approaches, diving, aerial insertion, surface vessel approach. They're not prepared for the kind of capabilities we possess. David examined the defensive positions with professional assessment. Long-range precision opportunities are limited by the artificial nature of the terrain. But there are architectural features that could provide effective firing positions if extraction requires combat support. Marcus analyzed communication intercepts and electronic intelligence with his inherited pattern recognition abilities. Chinese military communications are more sophisticated than anything we've encountered, but they're also more vulnerable to exploitation. If we can access their communications networks, we can potentially gather intelligence beyond just physical reconnaissance. Maya felt her inherited leadership capabilities integrating all tactical information into comprehensive operational understanding. This mission would require everything they'd learned about working as a team, but applied to challenges that exceeded their previous experience. Primary objective is intelligence gathering without detection, she summarized. We infiltrate the installations, collect comprehensive information about military capabilities and strategic intentions, and extract without Chinese forces being aware of our presence. What if we're detected? Sarah asked. Extraction becomes immediate priority. But mission parameters require that we avoid any action that could be interpreted as act of war. The planning continued for the entire week, their inherited capabilities allowing them to develop tactical approaches that conventional military planning couldn't identify. By the time they were ready for deployment, Maya felt confident in their ability to accomplish the mission, but apprehensive about the strategic implications of success or failure. The submarine insertion was unlike anything they'd experienced before. The underwater approach required navigation through artificial reef systems and defensive sonar networks that challenged James's terrain reading abilities in entirely new ways. Sonar contacts indicate Chinese patrol vessels operating predictable patterns, the submarine commander reported. We can insert your team during shift change intervals, but extraction timing will be critical. Maya felt her inherited situational awareness expanding to encompass underwater, tactical environment that was completely alien to her previous experience. But something deeper than conscious knowledge was processing the information, providing understanding that exceeded her training. Team ready for insertion, she reported. The insertion proceeded flawlessly, their inherited capabilities allowing them to reach the artificial islands without triggering any Chinese defensive measures. But once they were on the islands, Maya realized that they were facing the most sophisticated military installations any of them had ever seen. These aren't just defensive positions, Lisa whispered as they moved through the installations. They're comprehensive military bases capable of projecting power throughout the region. The intelligence value is enormous. Sarah's reconnaissance abilities were providing continuous updates on Chinese personnel patterns and security procedures. Security is sophisticated but routine. They're not expecting infiltration, so defensive measures are focused on deterring rather than detecting. Maya's inherited tactical awareness was building comprehensive understanding of the installation's strategic capabilities. The intelligence they were gathering would provide unprecedented insight into Chinese military intentions and capabilities. Intelligence collection proceeding successfully, she reported. But we need to accelerate timeline. These installations are more significant than intelligence indicated. Marcus was accessing Chinese communications networks with his inherited analytical abilities, gathering electronic intelligence that exceeded their mission parameters. Their communications are providing strategic information about military planning throughout the region. This intelligence could change the balance of power in the South China Sea. Maya felt the weight of strategic responsibility that exceeded tactical mission requirements. They weren't just gathering intelligence, they were potentially affecting global military balance through information that could determine policy decisions for years. Complete intelligence collection and prepare for extraction. This information is too important to risk through extended operations. The extraction proceeded as precisely as the insertion, their inherited capabilities allowing them to withdraw from the artificial islands without triggering any Chinese security responses. By the time Chinese forces realized that their installations had been penetrated, Maya's team was already back aboard the submarine and heading toward international waters. Mission accomplished, Maya reported. Intelligence gathered exceeds all operational expectations. The debriefing following their return revealed that they'd accomplished something that would reshape strategic thinking about Chinese military capabilities and intentions in the South China Sea. The intelligence you gathered, General Morrison explained, provides comprehensive assessment of Chinese strategic planning that no other source has been able to develop. This information will inform policy decisions at the highest levels of government. Colonel Hayes added, your operational success against peer military adversaries validates Project Looking Glass as a strategic capability rather than just tactical enhancement. You've proven that inherited abilities can provide decisive advantages in conflicts that determine global balance of power. Maya felt profound satisfaction, mixed with understanding of the broader implications of their success. They'd accomplished something unprecedented, but success would inevitably lead to even greater expectations and responsibilities. "What's next for the program?" she asked. "Expansion," General Morrison replied. "Based on your proven success, Project Looking Glass will be elevated to strategic priority with resources to develop inherited capabilities on a scale that can address global threats." Dr. Vasquez looked concerned. "General, our research still indicates that inherited capabilities require careful development approaches that can't be rapidly scaled without significant risks. Which is why we're implementing the specialist development model that Maya's team proposed. Rather than trying to replicate comprehensive inherited abilities, we'll focus on developing individuals with specific genetic inheritances who can augment conventional forces." Maya nodded. It was a compromise that balanced operational requirements with developmental realities, providing enhanced capabilities without requiring the intensive integration that made her team so effective, but also so difficult to replicate. "Will our team continue operations?" Sarah asked. "Absolutely. You've proven capabilities that can't be replicated, at least not in the near term. Your operational employment will focus on missions that require comprehensive inherited abilities, rather than just specialized enhancement." As the briefing concluded, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her from a struggling recruit to the leader of the most unique military unit in the world. Her inherited capabilities had connected her to ancestors, whose experiences had been forged in conflicts she could barely imagine. But those capabilities had also given her responsibilities she was still learning to understand. The story that had begun with an impossible grouping on a firing range had evolved into something that would affect military strategy and global policy for years to come. Project Looking Glass had proven that human potential extended far beyond conventional understanding, that genetic inheritance could provide capabilities that exceeded conscious training and development. But Maya also understood that with those capabilities came responsibilities that extended beyond any single mission or operation. She and her teammates were carrying forward genetic legacies that connected them to generations of warriors, scouts, engineers, and leaders who had faced impossible odds and found ways to prevail. The next phase of their journey would test not just their tactical abilities, but their understanding of how inherited capabilities fit into larger questions about human potential and military effectiveness in an increasingly complex world. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Maya was ready to face them with her teammates, carrying forward capabilities that had been tested in the crucible of human conflict and refined across generations of survival and service. Years later, Project Looking Glass had transformed military operations worldwide. Maya's bloodline had proven that human potential truly had no limits, and her legacy lived on in every soldier who discovered that their ancestors' greatest gift still flowed through their veins. The impossible shot that started all had become the foundation for a new understanding of what it meant to serve, not just with learned skills, but with the inherited wisdom of warriors who had come before. Maya Chen had found her destiny, and in doing so, had helped humanity find its own. 6 months later, Maya stood on the same firing range where her journey had begun, watching a new group of recruits work through their weapons qualification. The dust still hung in the Georgia air, the brass casings still rang against concrete, and drill sergeants still barked corrections over the noise of rifle fire. But everything had changed. Project Looking Glass had evolved from an experimental program into a strategic capability that was reshaping military operations around the world. The specialist development approach Maya had proposed was producing individuals with inherited abilities who could provide enhanced capabilities to conventional units. Not every candidate possessed the comprehensive genetic inheritance that her team represented, but many carried forward specific capabilities that could make decisive differences in tactical situations. How many of them do you think carry inherited abilities they don't know about? Sarah Martinez asked, joining Maya at the observation point. Maya watched the recruits working through their qualification courses. Her inherited spatial processing abilities automatically assessing their techniques and capabilities. Probably more than we realize. Most inherited abilities remain dormant until the right triggers occur, like yours did. Like all of ours did. Dr. Vasquez had continued her research into the genetic basis of inherited capabilities, developing increasingly sophisticated methods for identifying individuals who carried forward abilities from ancestors who'd survived extreme conflicts. The results suggested that genetic inheritance of military capabilities was far more common than anyone had imagined. We've identified over 300 candidates with various types of inherited abilities, Dr. Vasquez had reported in her latest briefing. Marksmanship genetics, navigation inheritance, reconnaissance capabilities, structural analysis abilities, cryptographic and linguistic gifts. Most don't represent the comprehensive inheritance your team possesses, but they provide significant enhancement potential. Maya's original team continued to operate as an integrated unit, taking on missions that required the kind of comprehensive inherited capabilities that couldn't be replicated through individual specialists. Their success rate remained perfect. Their tactical effectiveness continued to exceed conventional military understanding, and their strategic value had been proven in operations that affected global balance of power. But Maya had also become increasingly involved in training and developing others with inherited abilities, sharing her experience and helping them understand how to integrate genetic memories with conscious awareness. It's not just about the technical capabilities, she explained to new candidates during orientation sessions. It's about understanding that you're carrying forward genetic legacies from ancestors who faced impossible odds and found ways to prevail. Your abilities connect you to generations of service and sacrifice that extends far beyond any individual mission. The psychological aspects of inherited capability development had proven to be as complex as Dr. Vasquez had predicted. Some candidates struggled with the realization that they possessed abilities they couldn't explain. Others found it difficult to integrate genetic memories with their conscious understanding of themselves. But for those who successfully navigated the development process, the results were remarkable. Maya had watched individuals discover capabilities they never knew they possessed, develop skills that exceeded their conscious training, and find confidence in abilities that seemed to come from genetic memory rather than learned experience. The important thing to remember, she told each new group, is that inherited capabilities aren't just about being better at specific tasks. They're about carrying forward the accumulated wisdom of survival from generations of people who faced the ultimate test of human conflict. Colonel Hayes had been promoted to general, recognizing his role in developing and implementing Project Looking Glass capabilities. Major Patterson had assumed command of the program's day-to-day operations, continuing to oversee the careful balance between operational employment and developmental expansion. The strategic implications of inherited capabilities were still being explored by military planners and policymakers around the world. If genetic inheritance could provide decisive tactical advantages, what did that mean for military recruitment, training, and operational planning? How should modern military forces integrate individuals with inherited abilities? What were the ethical implications of identifying and developing genetic legacies that people might not want to activate? Maya found herself thinking about these broader questions as she watched the recruits complete their qualification courses. Somewhere among them might be individuals who carried forward genetic inheritances from ancestors who'd been warriors, scouts, engineers, or leaders in conflicts that had shaped human history. Private Chen, report to Building 4 at 0800 tomorrow. Maya smiled, remembering Colonel Hayes speaking those same words 6 months earlier. The recruit he was addressing, now a young woman from Minnesota who just completed a qualification course. with scores that exceeded statistical probability, looked as confused as Maya had felt when her inherited abilities first manifested. "What do you think her story will be?" Sarah asked. "Different from ours," Maya replied, "but connected to the same fundamental truth, that human potential extends far beyond what we consciously understand, and that genetic inheritance can provide capabilities that seem impossible until they're activated." The recruit was already walking toward Building 4, her expression mixing curiosity with apprehension. Maya remembered that feeling, the sense of standing at the threshold of discoveries. That would change everything she thought she knew about herself. "Should we tell her what she's walking into?" Sarah asked. "She'll find out soon enough. Besides, some things can only be understood through experience." Maya took one last look at the firing range where her journey had begun, then turned toward the advanced training facilities where Project Looking Glass continued to explore the frontiers of human capability. Her inherited abilities had connected her to ancestors whose experiences had been forged in conflicts she could barely imagine, but those capabilities had also given her responsibilities she was still learning to understand. The story that had begun with an impossible grouping at target practice had evolved into something that would affect military strategy and human understanding for generations to come. Maya and her teammates had proven that genetic inheritance could provide capabilities that exceeded conscious training, that human potential extended far beyond conventional limitations, and that the accumulated wisdom of survival could be carried forward across generations of service and sacrifice. Their journey was far from over. If anything, they were just beginning to understand the full implications of what they'd discovered about human potential and genetic inheritance. But Maya was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, confident in abilities that connected her to generations of warriors who had faced impossible odds and found ways to prevail. After all, it was in her blood. Creating these stories takes significant time and effort. If you're enjoying this, please like, share, and subscribe.